So it all started with an unlucky guy who wakes up inside a wooden box. There he began banging on the walls non-stop for an entire year, but nothing happened, until he discovered that he was actually inside a dungeon. In it, he has to explore multiple floors and defeat powerful monsters. All of this while live streaming for the gods of the ancient world. The protagonist wonders where he is and whether he has lost his life. What he is touching seems to be wood. He wonders if it is a coffin, if someone placed him there thinking he was lifeless. But if he is in a coffin, he should be lying down, yet he is standing and he doesn't know what is happening or whether he remembers anything. First, he needs to get out of there, and since it is wood, he should be able to break it. He strikes the wood and something begins to wrap around his fist. The wood fragments into pieces as he keeps hitting it. The protagonist wonders why water keeps leaking out through the cracks, but then notices it is not water. A system screen appears, saying it is mysterious honey that provides life force and healing. The young man is startled by the notification. He realizes his wound is being healed. No matter how injured he becomes, he will be cured if he applies the honey to his wounds. Even hunger can be resolved with it. He wonders how much time has passed while he kept striking his way out. He has completely lost track of time of how long he has been pounding against the wall. After one final blow, the wall collapses and the protagonist says it finally happened. But he wants to know where on earth he is. It seems to be a tube with honey flowing through it, blocked by a rock at one end. The walls are metal, and he wonders how long he was inside the coffin. The system congratulates user 5248 for escaping the tutorial dungeon. He has entered the first floor, and a total of many people can proceed to the second floor. The protagonist wonders what that means and whether there is more to it. A system window asks him to choose a nickname to be used during live broadcasts. Go In-sung wonders if he has been trapped inside some kind of strange game. He kneels down begging to be saved. The system notifies him that his nickname is Please Save Me, and that he can check his channel, but he cannot change it until he completes Area 1. A viewer named Reflection calls him an idiot and says that nickname is terrible. In-sung asks if they are watching him, and Reflection replies that he is in the middle of a live broadcast right now. He can check the channel details by pressing Settings. The screen shows his information, Korean nationality, and a total of 306 days streamed. In-sung wonders about this and wants to know who these fans are. He asks if he was dead, but the system responds yes and no at the same time. The protagonist asks to be sent back home and demands to know who they are. A man replies that he is very busy. In-sung begs him to explain what is going on. Reflection says he is not his teacher or anything like that and will not explain everything. If In-sung does the same thing in his broadcasts, he will be finished. In-sung wonders what he should do and whether he should press something. The dungeon shop screen appears, showing everything he can buy with balloons. In-sung thinks that if he was dead, this might be his chance to return to the world of the living. The system shows that a new person has joined his stream, and he realizes this must be like television. So he needs to entertain in order to earn balloons. He introduces himself as Go In-sung to his masters. The viewers comment that he is an idiot and should call himself Please Save Me. In-sung deduces that he was the 100th out of 101 people to complete the tutorial, and the next dungeon is limited to only 90 people. The viewers ask if he just noticed that and remark that it is not impressive to have taken 306 days to finish the tutorial. In-sung asks if they can tell him how to get out of there, but the viewers tell him to just do the same as in the tutorial. The protagonist says he simply punched his way through, but the viewers don't believe him. In-sung shows them the box. His fans mock how stupid he is, since all he needed to do was open the wooden box above him. He really did smash the wall and use honey whenever he was injured. One fan decides to reward his dedication, giving him 7 balloons. In-sung thanks them, thinking these are his first balloons. Then he says he will work hard and become number 1, while the viewer laughs at how seriously he says it. They tell him he should really work hard because the dungeon is no joke. A metal grate falls to the ground and In-sung cuts it open with a knife. The young man descends the stairs and the system notifies that the streamer Instant Beauty was the first to enter the dungeon. He receives a random rank F skill as a reward. The protagonist continues cutting and Reflection asks how many days he has been doing this. In-sung replies that it has been a week and Reflection is the only one who has kept watching until now. The young man complains that the rock hasn't moved at all. His head doesn't even fit in the honey pipe either, so Reflection tells him to do something that actually makes sense. In-sung wonders why there is a ladder and a saw in his inventory and his only viewer gives up. The protagonist manages to cut another piece but collapses onto the floor. He thinks they must have changed the item's name because the second bar lasted 10 days. He is exhausted and cannot cut through 2 more of those when the system warns that another person has entered the dungeon and only 15 slots remain. In-sung gets up, grumbling, and Reflection jokes that King Yahello is waiting for him. The protagonist looks up at the ceiling, almost crying, but then he decides to climb the stairs. His viewer asks what he's doing, since it has been so long and he is still doing the same thing. In-sung notices something different, and grabs the stairs. He shakes them and breaks them loose from side to side. Reflection comments that he has lost his mind, saying people always go insane in situations like these. A new person joins the stream and asks what this guy is doing. In-sung tells him to just watch and see what he's thinking, and the newcomer jokes that maybe he believes an ambulance will come save him. The protagonist shakes the stake, thinking it was just a little more. His viewers warn him that his hair is catching on fire. They call him insane anyway, while In-sung groans in pain and forces himself back up. His viewers donate a total 4 balloons and join his fan club. In-sung runs back and forth, shouting that since things had come to this, he would set fire to the massive stone wall. The stone moves on its own and falls to the ground, leaving his fans astonished. In-sung shouts that he did it, but the viewers are confused. They ask him to explain what happened, and the protagonist says it wasn't a stone at all, but a turtle that had been trapped there. The young man says he had a feeling it wasn't a stone, but some kind of animal. The dungeon had a total of 10 stages, and the clue he guessed was 10 and turtle, meaning 10 years of longevity. When compiling the keywords, that's what came to his mind. Since they said everything had a reason, it wasn't just speculation. The young man admires the new trial room. His system notifies him that this is a dungeon with a hidden treasure. He can leave if he has a treasure in his inventory. The fans shout that it's amazing, and In-sung says he doesn't know what drew him here since there are so many things, but he must be careful because everything has a reason. You will think carefully about it. He adds that maybe he can even find some gold coins. Then he picks up a copper coin, and the system says it can be exchanged for 10 balloons, but suddenly it starts dissolving in his hand. His chat laughs, saying he was fooled by the copper coin. In-sung mutters that this place is full of disappointment and wonders if he should try gold this time. Picking up a silver coin, the system notifies him that it is a tradable item, but it vanishes soon after as well. In-sung thinks this place feels more like a hall. He picks up an iron sword with attack power 5 and swings it around, until he hears a growling stomach on the other side, and the chat teases that it was really loud. In-sung reflects that he can only have one item in his inventory, which means there must be a hidden one. So it must be something around there, he thinks, rummaging through the pile of money. But even after minutes of searching, he finds nothing. His chat asks why his hands move so fast, saying he looks like a thief. A chalice falls to the ground, and In-sung realizes there are only ordinary treasures, nothing hidden. He knows he doesn't have much time left and needs to eat to recover his strength. He picks up some bread, calling it a banquet for himself. The turtle touches In-sung's leg with its paw, and he asks if it wants a piece of bread. Since he only escaped thanks to it, he decides to give it a bite, but then he notices something inside its mouth, and his chat jokes that he's going to lose his hand. In-sung reacts quickly enough to grab it without even hurting himself. The system announces it is a capture orb that allows him to tame an animal with a 100% success rate if he feeds it first. Everyone is shocked, and the chat begs for it not to be real. He can now use the chat window by spending 10 balloons, and Reflection donates 20. The chat wonders if he might be returned. In-sung questions the guaranteed chance of taming a monster, and whether that means monsters will appear in the future. The turtle lets out a sound, and In-sung shouts at it for eating all his bread. But then he thinks if he's right about the theme, it really is a turtle. He gets up and celebrates while the chat asks what he's trying to do. He repeats his theory about longevity and says the true protagonist of the first room is this turtle. Then he uses the capture orb on it. A massive energy fills the entire room, and the chat jokes they're going to call Animal Protection Services. The monster's true form emerges. The system announces that the protagonist has captured a giant turtle spirit, leaving his chat in disbelief. In-sung steps back, thinking this is insane as he faces the creature. The system warns that the spirit will return to its infant form, and the energy quickly recedes. It reveals a small turtle, and the chat says this is probably legendary. The baby turtle spirit gives the protagonist a liquid that heals. In-sung says he knows it's good, but it really is a high-rank item. His chat donates 5 balloons since he's on a winning streak. They keep recommending him, and the protagonist manages to level up in the system. He bows in gratitude. But then his tired eyes open slightly, and he wonders if he is suffering from fatigue. He suddenly collapses onto the dungeon floor, already unconscious. Footsteps are heard approaching. A noise of tiny chicks disturbs the protagonist. He wonders what it is and gets up angrily. Then he realizes he had fallen asleep while working. His job was to check whether those animals were female, something an untrained person could never do. The hens would be sent to grow, while the males were considered useless and discarded. In-sung yawns and wonders why he feels so sleepy today. Suddenly, a purple energy takes over his chair and approaches. The protagonist says that males are living beings too, as he trembles in fear, only to wake up from his nightmare inside the dungeon. In room 2 of the dungeon was a food storage chamber where one must escape with wisdom. In-sung says he was automatically brought to room 2. Then he notices the chicks and says he dreamed of them because of this, but he wonders if they might be food. The honey water was the same, but the surroundings were sealed off, except for a very high vent. He notices a gap in the wall that could be a path, but it is also too high. In-sung sits down, thinking the theme is 10 symbols of longevity, but the chicks don't fit. He suddenly stands up with the idea of punching the wall, and his chat jokes that nothing is more fun and simple than that. In-sung stops after a single punch that breaks off a piece. He says he'll check the shop first. The system is selling a rope, chicken feed, and a growth accelerator. In-sung reflects that he must raise these chickens, but first he'll raise his viewership. Buying for 50 balloons, the system allows 15 more people to join. In-sung reflects that now 20 people can watch, so he shouts that this time will be different and everyone should believe in him. The chickens grow, and after a few hours, he falls asleep on the floor. His chat begins to rebel, saying it's boring. In-sung reflects that his few fans are just a bunch of delinquents. Still, he feeds his chickens, and his chat asks why he does this every day. The protagonist says these birds will lay eggs since they're all females. The system notifies that the streamer's small satisfactions escaped the dungeon first and received a rank S skill chest. In-sung loses his mind over how fast it happened, and his chat mocks that he's going insane again. The next day, the protagonist wakes up to find eggs and realizes he can finally eat. The system says these eggs can increase stamina and dexterity. With a few pounding noises, In-sung is breaking through the wall. His fans wonder when he gains such an advantage and state they'd like some eggs too. In-sung reflects that he can't stay in last place and has no time. He keeps striking with all his strength, trying to break out. His blows shatter parts of the wall, and his chat jokes that they can see a ray of hope. In-sung stops, his hand injured. He wonders why he hadn't thought of this sooner, as the turtle heals him. The young man thanks it, and his chat jokes that it's time for his little young guy to grow up. In-sung announces he's close to breaking through, and his wound is fully healed. But the system reminds him that the streamer Moon Swordsman has entered the next room, leaving only 66 slots remaining. In-sung kneels on the ground, wondering why he's even here when he feels so exhausted. If only he could fly for a few seconds like the chickens, things would be easier. But after saying this, he gets an idea. The protagonist begins hitting the chickens, and his chat jokes that it's animal abuse. In-sung places the eggs around his arms, and then his body starts rolling back and forth across the floor. Suddenly, wings form on his back because of it, and the chat says it makes no sense at all. In-sung smiles, declaring that everyone will see whether it works or not, then leaps forward with all his strength. In real life, everyone always laughed at him, but now, thanks to the eggs, his strength and dexterity were superhuman. He would definitely be able to fly. In-sung uses all his strength, and the chat jokes that he actually did it. The protagonist tries to reach the vent, but immediately crashes to the ground. He looks up, thinking he can't just rely on strength alone, and that he must have stepped in the wrong place. Or maybe it was because those feathers weren't his own. Those creatures gain feathers through their own life force. In-sung repeats that last word, then stands up and says that's it. He approaches the honey, and his chat asks what's wrong with him this time. In-sung applies the honey to his wings, gaining life force from it. He screams that the feathers are digging into his flesh, but tells everyone to watch, because now they really are like his own wings. Finally, he buys a rope from the system. He says that now he can stabilize his wings, and his chat doesn't need to worry about him, since the theme of longevity in this room was rising up. In-sung smiles and presses his feet firmly against the floor. He leaps while shouting that he will become the very active Ascension with all these chickens. He manages to get close to the vent, and his chat refuses to believe what's happening. A strange energy surrounds his body, and he twists in midair while the chat comments it's been a while since anyone used honey. The protagonist escapes the room, and the system offers a special chat for 10 balloons. Reflection donates 50 balloons, saying he will never doubt him again, and the others in chat say it's their first time witnessing such an idiot. The system announces is a path leading to room 4 of the dungeon. In-sung questions it, and the chat explains it's a reward for escaping the hard way. Reflection donates another 50 balloons, saying his eyes are only for him, and the chat jokes that even Yama is watching. The protagonist asked about that, but it's just one of his fans' jokes. A castle appears before him, shrouded in smoke. In a strange corridor, someone says they've just been watching all along without anyone knowing. They admit they haven't seen someone as bizarre as this guy in quite some time. In-sung sits at the edge of the air vent, staring downward. His chat asks why he's wasting time thinking and insists he should move forward. The protagonist decides to climb down from the vent. His chat questions why he's going back to the previous floor. In-sung explains he's going to buy more chicken feed. He says they all deserve to eat as well. The leftovers would return to his inventory. He picks up a chicken, saying he'll bring them along too. His chat jokes that he can't take food out of room 2, and the protagonist suddenly remembers. He leaps upward with a bag clenched in his mouth, returning to the vent in the sky. In-sung says that rule existed, but he's already in room 4. The system announces he was the first to enter and that 69 slots remain. He receives a Ramen rank F skill as a reward. In-sung says he'll deal with the skill later. First, he needs to pluck all these feathers. Groaning in pain, his chat asks why it hurts so much. The rank F skill box appears, and In-sung says he'll open it properly. His chat shouts for him to get an advanced evasion skill, but instead the box gives him an enhanced focus skill, and In-sung says he'll learn it anyway. Energy floods into his body, making his eyes glow. In-sung learns the skill strength and concentration, which increases stamina the longer it is used. The protagonist's mind clears, sharper than usual. He begins walking as dim lights fail to fully illuminate the corridor. In-sung keeps walking, and the system explains that Rune 4 is a passage where prisoners once escaped. He repeats words about determination and wisdom while opening the shop, which sells food, water, and armor. The protagonist wonders if this is a dangerous place, and the very fact that armor is being sold confirms it. He decides to buy leather armor and continue onward. A massive axe swings down, narrowly missing In-sung's head. The protagonist activates the focus enhancement skill. He manages to dodge the strike of the axe. In-sung stares at the weapon as it dissolves into an aura. He wonders what that was and whether this place is a passage filled with traps. A light approaches him, revealed to be an arrow that pierces his shoulder. In-sung comments that they are fire arrows as well, but he pulls it out with ease. His chat makes jokes about the arrowhead, saying he should use it as a bookmark. The protagonist tosses the arrow behind him, thinking that wasn't the solution either. But he apologizes to his fans, saying it will be boring for a while, and the chat wonders what's about to happen. Hours later, hundreds of eggs are broken, and the spectators comment that he is insane. In-sung runs back and forth, powered by the boost in vigor. Panting heavily when he finally stops, he thanks everyone for waiting for him. Then he reflects that he ate 20 muscle system eggs and focused his strength as well. Now he can actually do it. He crouches down, then takes off running, and his fans ask why he keeps carrying the chickens. The focus enhancement skill, now at level 2, activates. In-sung dodges, saying he already knew it was a trap. He keeps sprinting while releasing the chickens. His chat comments that he was using them as shields against projectiles, and In-sung apologizes for that. The protagonist sees something coming from the end of the path, but he grabs the spear with his bare hands, straining with effort. The strike nearly pierces his eye, and his chat is amazed at his strength. Other lights brighten the place as more arrows fly in, blocked by the spear. But one arrow manages to pierce his back. In-sung endures, saying he just needs a break. If he keeps running, he'll survive. Then he accelerates again, pushing his speed to the limit to make it through. Until this time, he notices blades rushing toward him. The young man pulls his spear back and tries to parry the blade, surprising his chat. They scream for someone to save their streamer. In-sung uses the spear as support, propelling himself through the air. He lands in a barren land, and the system notifies that he has reached a safe zone. He sighs in relief, saying he finally made it before collapsing. He wonders if this exhaustion is a side effect of the focus enhancement, and his body feels heavy with fatigue. In front of him is sand, the first time he has seen it since arriving in this place. Sometime later, he wakes up, saying he must have slept, but his chat tells him it's been an entire week. The young man is stunned, now standing before a massive door. He comments that it's huge, even bigger than the one in room 2. Since it's a door, he only needs to open it. But then he notices a keyhole, realizing that the first arrow that struck him was actually a key. Still, he warns he won't go back, and his chat asks if he's giving up. In-sung reflects that if he looks back at everything that's happened, there's only one way to escape, and there's no guarantee he'll find that arrow again. In that case, he approaches the barrier and picks up a few arrows within reach. He comments that it seems the first arrow at the entrance was unique. The system announces that Instant Beauty has entered Dungeon 4, and In-sung reflects on how they're always in first place. However, it is then announced that a condition has been met and a new item has been added to the TV shop. It's a chat channel between streamers, and In-sung makes his decision. He sees a keyboard and a chat window appear. A girl in high heels arrives on the floor and wonders what kind of nonsense this is. She looks to the side, seeing a message from another streamer. Then she's surprised by what has just happened. In-sung receives a reply from the girl, who asks if he was the guy in the top 3. Instant Beauty comments that he had an interesting name, while mentally calling him an idiot. Suddenly, a light approaches her and grazes her stomach. The arrow falls to the ground, and she questions where it came from. It was seriously dangerous, while her chat calls it a cursed arrow. Instant Beauty throws it away, shouting that she's hurt, and the chat is surprised at her sudden change in attitude. The girl wonders what was wrong, insisting she had done nothing bad, while thinking her true self had almost been revealed. A message from In-sung arrives, saying she must be busy. Instant Beauty answers that she was hit by an arrow. The protagonist comments that she must have entered the passage, and the girl complains that he should have told her about it. He asks what the arrowhead looked like, and Instant Beauty says she'll tell him hers if he tells her his. In-sung is surprised, thinking he doesn't care. She doesn't say, and the girl responds that she already threw it away. He bursts into laughter, and his chat comments that his name is Go In-sung because he was close to losing his life. In-sung offers a trade, and the girl thinks she has the most balloons, but he was there only for an exchange, asking what kind, while the protagonist says it'll be an exchange of information. She smiles and asks if he was feeling insecure. In-sung curses this damned woman, and his chat jokes that he's being judged by a woman. The protagonist tells her that she won't escape without the arrow she threw away. Instant Beauty asks what he means and where it's used, while In-sung says he doesn't know. She decides to search everywhere since it's something necessary to get out of there. Tripping on the floor, she nearly falls from the bridge but manages to cling on and climb back up, thinking she had been wrong. In this place, the one one who explored more gained more power. She would go to hell with her pride. Then she says she was only joking and asks if the arrow might appear again somewhere. In-sung asks how she got past the 3rd floor before revealing his answer, and she says she used rope and other things to climb. The protagonist thinks she scaled a wall, and the other method could have been stairs. A wall or stairs, an obstacle that must be overcome. It was definitely the mountain theme from the 10 symbols of longevity. Instant Beauty asks where the arrow is, and the protagonist smiles. He explains it was the key to escape from the 4th floor, leaving her shocked. The girl asks if it reappears, but In-sung shatters her hopes. She needles and asks if he doesn't need to look for it too. In-sung says he still has the arrow and never threw it away. The girl sighs in frustration, and the chat channel is closed by the protagonist. He writes in the sand about turtles, cranes, and mountains, with the 10 remaining symbols being the sun, water, peaches, clouds, and deer. What he has before him is a metal door and a great wall, where the remaining symbol on this path is nothing, since he can't think of it, and he rolls on the ground angrily. Elsewhere, Instant Beauty complains that she fell for his trick and didn't get any useful information even after revealing details about the arrow. But in this dungeon, there was more than one way to escape. She stands thinking she still has a chance. In her life on Earth, many guys hit on her, calling out to Heijin repeatedly. Yuvazin thinks she had a line of men trying to help her. Her chat shouts that this damn please save had a witch before losing his life. The Sky Prince donates 15 balloons to comfort her, and Heijin says it was her fault and thanks him. Another fan sends 20 balloons saying she did nothing wrong, and the girl thanks him too. Her number 1 fan, the Ethics Queen Bee, enters the room and the girl celebrates. Heijin thinks this was her only real fan channel, and he earned that title after watching 200 hours and sending 1,000 balloons. The Queen Bee sends 100 balloons saying that if she keeps acting like this, she should tell him, because she's going to scold him hard. Instant Beauty replies that she'll let him know if she needs help, thinking that men always like to be on the front lines. She sighs, realizing she needs to take a break and think about the situation since the passage is blocked. She comments that please save never said that specifically, but she's sure he doesn't have the arrow either. She takes off her vest and her chat goes crazy, thanking her. They ask what the girl is going to do as she walks to the edge. Heijin stares coldly at the river and jumps straight into it. In-sung looks at the shop items, saying he doesn't need to know because he's not going to take them. He wonders if he really needs the first arrow while tracing his finger through the sand. Back on the bridge, a hand manages to cling to the edge. Heijin says she knew it, and that she was right. She can dodge the traps as long as she stays on the edge, and her chat praises her for it. The girl explains that she got a hint while she was looking for the first arrow and fell. She thinks the problem is just how long the path is as she lets go with one hand, but grabs on again right away, thinking she has to hold on no matter what. At the door, In-sung thinks the first floor was turtles, the second was chickens, and the third was mountains. So the rest should follow that pattern. One of those must be the theme of the 4th floor. Dirty floors, great walls, iron gates, and live honey. He can only buy water, bread, and armor from the shop, and none of it correlates. But then he breaks the arrow, notices something different, and shouts that it's bamboo. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Heijin is still hanging. She says she's reached her limit and thinks she's about to fall, but she has to endure a little longer. She's almost there. She tries to climb up and thinks she can't. She sits at the edge to rest when something quickly approaches. Another arrow strikes her arm. The girl groans in pain as she falls toward the honey. In-sung soaks the bamboo sticks in honey, and his chat says that should be enough for him. He says the honey provides life force and then drives the bamboo into the ground. The reason the floor was sand was exactly for this, and the chat comments that he's a genius, asking when it will grow. Because bamboo takes a long time to grow tall, and this was peak creativity. Heisu falls into the honey, unconscious. In a national Aikido hall, a teacher guides his students. He shouts at them to repeat twice and asks how they would survive in a tiger's den. Hasu answers that they should become a tiger. Her teacher confirms they must never give up, no matter the situation, because there's always a way to overcome a problem. The girl asks her father how to become a tiger, and then wakes up inside the honey of life. In-sung rests in front of the gate, thinking that bamboo normally grows 4 or 5 meters tall, but this would have to reach more than 20. He's hungry and should probably buy some bread. Then suddenly remembers the growth accelerator. It was 100 times better. It had made the chickens grow in just 3 days. He wonders if it has no limits when used on plants. Another streamer enters floor 4, leaving only 48 slots. He decides to open his inventory and take out the vial of growth accelerator. In-sung pours it onto the bamboo, saying he has to at least try. After a few seconds, the growth begins exponentially. Heisu manages to climb out of the honey of life, staggering forward. She pulls the arrow from her arm and says she absolutely has to get out of here. Even if she has to become a tiger, so she swims away. In-sung braces himself between 2 bamboo stalks and uses them as support to climb upward. His fans comment that he'll be the first again, but they wanted to see him suffer. In-sung thinks humans have grown stronger, and he wouldn't be able to endure this if it weren't for the egg system. The chat shouts that he's reached the entrance, and once again, he's the first. In-sung declares that he won't stop here, that he has to keep moving forward, leaving everyone astonished. His chat asks what he's doing and tells him to stop wasting time and head to the bridge. They ask if he really thinks he can keep climbing higher like that. He thinks there are things coming down from the ceiling, and no matter how much he looks, they seem graspable. They must have been placed there for climbing. They're there for a reason. He shouts that he knows this and wonders if he can tell his chat, who ask if it's a tunnel. Clinging to the top of the bamboo, In Sung places his hands somewhere and thinks he's done it. His chat demands that he show it, but the young man says he'll show them once he's back on the ground. That bridge just so happens to be directly below him. So he lets go and lands safely, clutching the item. It's a celestial bamboo fruit, the favorite food of Phoenix, and consuming it increases life. The protagonist stores it back in his inventory so he won't lose it. He wonders if this might be the real entrance, or maybe a trap, but it's fine. There's no reason to think too deeply about it now. So he decides to go that way and enters the door. The system announces that it's a tunnel connecting to the 5th floor, and the protagonist celebrates. But suddenly, he falls endlessly through the ground. Outside on the bridge, Jesus wipes her clothes clean. She has fully recovered since applying the honey of life from room 3. She considers that there might be stairs here, and if she climbs them, they'll lead to the tunnel entrance. But before that, she dives into the honey. She thinks she needs to find the arrow she lost earlier, since glowing rocks are scattered there. It isn't difficult. She smiles, saying she really did find it, and then surfaces again. Climbing the stairs, she comments that now all she needs to do is return to the entrance and cross the tunnel to reach room 5. Elsewhere, In Sung is shouting for help as he falls. Finally, he crashes into a light, tumbles forward, and ends up kneeling. In Sung finds himself in a place completely distorted. He looks upward and mutters that it's a full moon. Jesus receives the system notice that In Sung was the first to enter room 5 with 49 slots remaining. She says it really does feel like there's something about him, but she'll catch up soon enough, and you should just wait. She's sure she isn't the only one thinking this. All the other challengers in room 4 must feel the same way. A man with green hair stops to comment that please save was first again. Another, dressed like a student, says he'll have to teach him an important life lesson soon. A girl remarks that without her cape she would have died and wonders why this guy is always so fast. In Sung thinks to himself that he has more than 900 balloons, a celestial bamboo fruit, and a random skill. He needs to save the fruit for emergencies, so for now he decides to open the skill. He receives something called Iron Will, and his chat is shocked. Judging from their reactions, In Sung assumes it's good. The system announces he has acquired the skill Iron Will and should check it. Iron Will doubles all physical stats for 3 minutes and activates automatically upon near death. He frowns, wondering about that, while his chat shouts that he thought it would be something amazing and had such high hopes. In Sung complains that it's a skill that only activates when he's about to die. One chat member says it's not completely useless, and that its true value will show later. He's reading through the chat, his attention caught by certain comments, and In Sung realizes he's been tricked. He grumbles that these people really are idiots. The system announces that in room 5 he can summon a manager and must choose wisely. Appointing a manager requires 100 balloons, and if he escapes room 7, new items will be added. He thinks it's a system meant to help and grant authority, while the chat begs to be chosen. In Sung decides it's obvious. He should summon the one who has given him attention and balloons from the very start, revealing that he will choose Mr. Reflection, to which the chat replies that it was expected. The system adds that if he wants additional managers, he'll have to reach a higher rank. A massive light suddenly radiates through the area. In Sung shields his face as a figure appears. An old man asks how long it has been. In Sung reflects that he's just a stranger, while the chat wonders why someone like that is watching television. In Sung notes his appearance and questions if he'll be able to communicate with him. The man asks if he's disappointed that he's just an old outsider, but the boy shakes his head. Then he introduces himself as Reflection 469. In the outside world, he's known by another name. His true name is Socrates. In Sung repeats the name and asks if he's the philosopher, and the old man confirms it. He asks whether the boy has never seen someone who has already lost their life before. In Sung says no, and Socrates understands. The protagonist asks why he's so good at Korean. Socrates tells him to try staying here for 2,000 years. In Sung asks how someone can remain in one place for 2,000 years without reincarnating or something like that, and Socrates points again to this place. Laughing, he says that hell was where he lived. You pay to be taken care of after you're born, spending even more money on food and baby items. Even if you graduate, you'll write reports until you're exhausted, and if you join a company, you might never buy a house in your whole life. When you die, your family pays for the funeral and judges how you lived. In Sung asks if he can't just change bodies, and Socrates notes he's worried about being old. The chat complains that their streamer is discriminating against the elderly. The young man says he only thought it was about age and asks why Socrates keeps putting words in his mouth, but Socrates finds it all amusing. Then a sound is heard from far away. A figure starts walking toward him. It reveals itself as a living monster, its lips seeming to sneer at In Sung. That zombie charges at him, grabbing the protagonist's arm to bite. Socrates tells him to deal with it before he starts bleeding. In Sung grabs its head and wrenches it off his arm, slamming it into the ground and shouting at it to get lost. The protagonist asks what that was, and Socrates approaches, saying he doesn't even know what the undead are. It won't die unless you deal with its head, and he's sure In-sung hasn't finished it. That monster will stand up and walk again in about half an hour, and In-sung mutters that this is hell. Socrates reminds him he has to clear out the dead while escaping the labyrinth, and he's bleeding heavily anyway. In-sung looks down and his chat jokes he'll bleed out and die. The protagonist reaches into his inventory and asks if the turtle slept well, since he's been feeding it and it needs to pay him back. He sets it to licking the wound. In-sung says he's healed now and his clothes really look awful. He changes into the ones he kept in his inventory, and Socrates remarks that he knows what it is to be in rough shape. The protagonist says the turtle will have to come with him. He opens the floor's shop right away. Wondering which weapon to buy, he's asked by Socrates whether he knows any weapon arts. He answers no, and the philosopher says that's good. He should buy a spear, humanity's oldest tool, very economical, and something everyone can learn. Swords are more for warriors. In-sung carefully weighs his options. He checks the pricier spears and counts 860 balloons. He figures the most expensive he can afford is the diamond spear. Socrates says he doesn't know the difficulty yet and should go with bamboo, but the chat disagrees. In-sung mentions the rusty spear. His fans say he could get the iron one for just 50 more balloons, but he still wants the rusty one. He decides on the iron spear, but everyone tells him to buy the strong iron spear, making him waver. In-sung says he'll buy that, and the chat says they'll add 200 more so he can get the 5-iron spear. Another person tells him to grab the diamond spear since it's better, and In-sung says that makes sense and he'll buy it. However, his chat stops him, telling him to beg for the first diamond spear. In-sung thinks he's a genius and starts calling for Mr. Socrates. The philosopher is taken aback, and the protagonist says he'll take the diamond one. He receives the item and thinks that 12 damage is a lot compared to what the dungeon offered before. The protagonist swings his spear, and his chat starts fawning over him. Socrates says the sun is going down and they should get moving. The system tells them both to step into the right place and to stand on the hexagon. He steps on it, and the system asks him to choose a difficulty, advanced, intermediate, or beginner, with better rewards for higher difficulty. In-sung thinks he can choose and is definitely going with beginner. Socrates tells him to pick advanced, repeating it several times. In-sung thinks the old man's opinion doesn't matter and tries to choose beginner, but Socrates insists on advanced. The system declares the difficulty set to advanced, asking how he could pick the easy route when the rewards are so good. They are transported straight into Rune 5 of the dungeon, to a desolate land, a labyrinth that can be escaped with determination and wisdom. In-sung notes that up to 4 people can go, and Socrates says in this case he can go with just one companion. Then he tells him to pay attention. An army of undead sprints toward them. In-sung dodges their attacks with the turtle on his shoulder. With his spear, the young man cleaves through everything in his path. Creatures crash to the ground, their heads severed from their bodies. Socrates warns that some are coming from above as well. One of the creatures drops toward him. He's struck by the monster's foot and pinned to the ground. In-sung refuses to accept it, wondering if he's about to die like this. Socrates releases a bluish aura toward the remaining undead. The protagonist watches as the creatures are driven away, clearing his path. Hands claw up over the young man's body while Socrates stands in front of him. The monsters recoil from the light, then are blasted away in an explosion. Socrates tells In-sung to watch closely. He's about to show the skills of someone 2,000 years old. The monsters charge toward him, and Socrates considers the situation, then tells the boy to watch him. One of the creatures rushes at him and attempts an attack. Socrates dodges the strike and assumes a stance to wield his spear. He thrusts downward, and the chat says it's a super powerful counterattack. Another creature tries to strike from behind, but Socrates was already prepared. He slashes through its neck, severing it from the rest of its body. Socrates plants his spear into the ground, and the chat begins to revere him. He tells In-sung telepathically that he has strong visual awareness and reaction speed thanks to the eggs, and his physique is solid as well. If they miss a strike, they won't be able to get into position for their next move. He needs to dodge and counterattack, and In-sung says he understands. Reflecting, he realizes more are coming. Socrates orders him to raise his spear and not just stand there thinking. He won't explain every detail of what he's doing and wonders how long the boy expects him to stay in control. A zombie swings at him with its long arm, but In-sung ducks, evades, and drives his spear into the creature's stomach, earning praise from the chat. The creature collapses to the ground, and the protagonist relentlessly stabs it with his spear. In-sung says he can feel it now, and his focus enhancement skill rises to level 3. The chat warns him not to get too excited and tells him to look behind, where the creature is writhing on the ground. He shouts that they're reviving, and the chat tells him to destroy the heads or use holy water. In-sung decides to buy it, and his chat tells him it's not something you drink. The boy says he'll use a little since it's precious, pouring it onto the creature's head. It thrashes, screaming, and he yells that it's still awake, so he pours holy water into its mouth. The zombie explodes immediately after. In-sung admits it scared him and says he had to use the whole bottle. At this rate, it costs 10 balloons to kill one, and he only has 150 left. The zombies writhe on the ground trying to get up. Socrates says knowledge is power, but the protagonist doesn't understand. He wonders if this is a direct descendant of the black turtle, so he sets the turtle on the ground, startling the zombie. The turtle radiates golden energy and In-sung panics, saying the mystical turtle is draining them. Socrates notes that it really works, and In-sung declares it's pure black turtle bloodline. It's like light mingled with darkness, controlling the dead and spirits, and the chat remarks that Socrates knows history too. In-sung thinks, more precisely, it's absorbing impure energy and sending souls back to life. That's how the turtle grows. Socrates says it's like how trees absorb carbon dioxide, calling it useless knowledge. The turtle finishes, absorbing all the energies. In-sung picks it up from the ground, saying it's different because it's a mystical creature, and he's the first human to feed one with chicken feed. The protagonist admits he was wrong, thinking that recognizing mistakes is a good thing. At first, he thought it was someone with a lot of balloons, so he thanks Socrates for everything he's done. He asks how to get out of there, and the philosopher asks if he knows the tale of the labyrinth, the part where a threat was used to escape. In-sung snaps his fingers and tosses a breadcrumb onto the ground. He says monsters don't eat that, and the chat comments that it makes no sense. He's mixing it up with the story of Hansel and Gretel. The boy then gets his system notification that Instant Beauty has entered the 5th floor, and the protagonist calls out to her. He walks along the trail thinking that it's been 2 days since Instant Beauty arrived, yet they still haven't made contact. He wonders if she'll complete it on her own. Either way, since the number of people required is fixed, they'll probably want everyone together. He wonders if he should send her a message, but if she tries anything funny, he'll lose all of his rest. He tosses breadcrumbs onto the ground. Socrates comments that night is falling and the light seems to be dimming, but in truth, the light isn't moving. Monsters won't react unless he gets close. They rely solely on scent. Since the monsters are gathered together, he should head somewhere else, but Socrates tells him to go straight toward them. In-sung asks why he should waste his strength by doing that, and as he continues forward, the philosopher asks why he doesn't just look for the easy path. Walking further, he notices something strange this time. In-sung says the way is blocked again and that it'll last for an hour. Socrates explains its design so they can't eavesdrop. The protagonist says there are monsters behind that barrier, and the philosopher replies that's exactly why they were led here. In-sung notices something on the ground and mutters that the breadcrumbs are gone. He wonders if the monsters ate them, but there aren't any birds around either. Then he hears a female voice calling from another direction. In-sung recognizes it as human and turns, seeing Hasu's foot. The girl is searching around, looking side to side. In-sung greets her, and the chat comments that they finally met here. He says it's nice to meet her, and Hasu reflects that he's tall and strong and not bad-looking either. The protagonist notices she's carrying an indestructible sword worth 1,600 balloons, so she must be rich. Socrates remarks that she's being possessed by her manager and will speak in that way. Hasu asks why he's whispering and if he's the shy type, while the chat ridicules him. Socrates scowls at the girl and tells In-sung to ask her about the missing breadcrumbs. They both try to speak at the same time, but Hasu yields and lets the protagonist go first. He asks if she picked up the bread pieces from the ground. The girl grows frustrated and asks if that's really what he wanted to say, while the protagonist assumes she ate them. Hasu angrily asks if he thinks she's a beggar. She says she brought plenty of bread from room 4 and didn't touch them. She's no pigeon. In-sung replies that anyone is capable of making mistakes, and anyone would commit them if they didn't want to live, and Socrates agrees. Hasu demands to know why the old man is interfering, and he snaps back. Saying he's older than the history of Seoul, Hasu calls him rude and more like an idiot. She says this is all really irritating, then notices something unusual. The girl comments on the turtle and asks where it came from. In-sung answers that it's not just a turtle, but a mystical being. The girl asks again if it didn't eat the breadcrumbs. The protagonist says it's a sacred creature, not one that eats bread off the ground, and even if it tried, he wouldn't allow it. His chat comments that he fed it chicken feed, and Hasu asks if she's worse than the animal, and if he's just raising his voice at her. The chat comments that no one has ever gotten mad at her before, and the turtle growls at her. Hitsu asks her ethics queen bee to come out and do something about it since he can see she's struggling now. Socrates asks if that's the so-called ethics queen bee, because that manager has been causing a ton of problems recently. He tells him to come out now. In-sung says it's fine and that he'll assume she did meet the breadcrumbs, while Hasu insists it's the truth. The protagonist apologizes and takes back what he said. He admits he was rude since it's their first time meeting, and Hasu says it's fine. In-sung suggests that since 4 people are needed at this level, they should work together. She stares at him for a moment, then says that's exactly what she was thinking too. They both turn, and the boy asks about heading to the place where the monsters are gathering, but Hasu refuses, saying something important seems about to happen here. Socrates remarks that she clearly knows a thing or two. Time passes, and the philosopher notes that the undead don't seem to see or hear them. In-sung reflects that she isn't an ordinary person, but since there are 8 monsters, he'll take care of 4 of them. The girl charges forward before he finishes speaking and engages one of the monsters. In-sung thinks she's so fast it looks like teleportation. Hasu raises her sword for a downward strike and cleaves the creature in half. Then she glances back to see more corpses approaching. In-sung tightens his grip on his spear, saying he won't lose to her. He activates his focus enhancement skill and charges toward a group of creatures. A thrust into one of the creatures catches Hazu's attention. The protagonist says she can thank him later, but the girl tells him to keep dreaming. In-sung swings his spear behind his head and splits a creature cleanly in half. His chat comments that he's definitely talented. The protagonist thanks everyone for their comments and keeps moving forward. Hesu does the same with her fans, thinking that tons of balloons are pouring in. In-sung looks down and finds a bull's chest, thinking it's something protected, while Hesu suggests they open it. The protagonist is surprised to discover a scroll inside that reveals the exit. He says he'll take a look, but Hesu warns that it will attract monsters. In-sung glances at the corpse of a zombie and decides to store it in his inventory to deal with the remaining monsters. Hesu says that since they need to buy holy water, they should go that way. The protagonist smiles and asks how many flasks she has, 5 in total. In-sung says he'll take care of all the monsters, and in exchange, she should share the holy water. He doesn't have much on him, and the girl asks if he plans to drink it like normal water. She also wants to know how many balloons he has, but shortly after, she accepts the deal between them. In-sung sets the small turtle on the ground, and it begins absorbing the energy. Hesu asks if it isn't just a normal turtle, but the protagonist replies that it's a mystical creature, a descendant of the black turtle. The little one keeps absorbing all the monsters with great effort. The undead disintegrate, and a few minutes later, the chat comments that she seems faster after eating. In-sung reflects that these monsters have a strong sense of smell, but they can surely strike in the right direction. The turtle is about to eat the corpses, but the protagonist tells it to wait a minute. Hesu remarks that one of the zombies is already reviving, but in front of them, the protagonist takes out the celestial fruit. She asks what he pulled out, and the boy says it's a sacred item containing immense life force. He asks Mr. Socrates to hold it for him, and to stay by Hasu's side because it'll only take a little while. Socrates asks what on earth is going on. This time, the zombie charges toward the group. Socrates tries to figure out what's happening, but the zombie lunges at him. He strikes the monster's face, asking if it's lost its mind since it's already dead. The zombie grabs his shoulder, but Hesu delivers a clean slash across its back. The creature collapses, and Socrates asks why the undead would attack at all. He wonders if it could be the fruit, and In-sung confirms the hypothesis. They're reacting to the life force, not the scent. In that case, there's a way to distract them while they read the map. Socrates suggests that since In-sung asked him to hold it, he should use the fruit to lure the monsters away. And if he's really going to use something so dangerous that way, but In-sung refuses. He says he only needs to take a small bite, then run while the life force fades. He thinks it's the perfect plan to escape. Socrates flatly rejects the plan. In-sung insists it's a decent plan, and Hesu asks why he won't do it. The philosopher asks why her manager doesn't come out instead of making him run alone. He tells them to do it together, and In-sung agrees with his manager. Hesu calls for the queen bee to come out, warning she'll glare at him if he doesn't show. An aura manifests in the middle of the trio. Socrates shouts that he knew it, and a man approaches, saying it's been a while. That man was Plato, Socrates' student. The chat says they're just acting out of nowhere, and that it isn't important right now. Hesu asks if the queen bee is actually Plato. Socrates complains that he hasn't seen him recently, and wants to know what kind of nonsense he's been up to. Plato admits he was hiding because he was ashamed to face his teacher. Plato asks what he's doing here, and Socrates replies it's just a small pastime. The other philosopher says the same. The teacher, if you can call it a hobby, once asked a female streamer to dance on the stairs, and Plato tries to deny it. A loyal fan of Please Save sends 10 balloons, telling them to consider it a platonic love, and the chat jokes that he's a dark version of himself. Hesu says she's disappointed in him for acting like that, especially since he's so famous. Plato tries to deny it, saying his past doesn't matter. Now he is the queen bee, an existence that depends on her to be happy, but Socrates punches him in the face. Hesu tells them to stop this reunion and decide who's going to run. Socrates reminds them it was already revealed the moment her manager turned out to be his student. He says he'll run, and since he hates doing it, he'll temporarily possess In-sung. He orders him to keep an eye on the map, but the protagonist says he doesn't know how long he can hold it open, and Hesu tells him to just do it. The map unfolds, showing a blue line. In-sung complains that the map is too complicated, and the system warns that 73 monsters will be within range in less than 20 seconds. The boy mutters that this is bad, but Hesu says it's the exit. He feels pressure as the system warns that 1,033 monsters are 10 seconds away. Hesu tells him to close the map, leaving In-sung confused. She explains that she memorized everything and he should shut it now, just as the monsters come into view. In-sung stows the map and tells Plato to handle the celestial bamboo fruit. The philosopher takes a piece and says they'll meet again later as he runs. He grumbles that if they catch him, they'll cut his body into pieces, which is frustrating, but his teacher will just have to wait. In-sung says they really did follow him and tells Hesu to be trusted, while she warns that they'll have to turn right. At Korea University, she was known as Kim Tae-gi, a beautiful and popular actress. She calls out that now they should turn left, and they keep running. The girl guides them through the maze, alternating between left and right. She says they finally reached the exclamation point marked on the map and should turn right there again. After that, they'll run straight forward without stopping. Hesu says they've reached the platform and both of them climb up, but the system announces they cannot return to room 4. The protagonist realizes this was the entrance, not the exit. He asks what the hell this is, but Hesu insists she didn't make a mistake. In-sung says she's been trying to take first place since they got here, but the girl claims she didn't do it intentionally. He complains he can't trust humans, and Hesu tries to deny it again. The protagonist notices something different. He had dropped breadcrumbs along the way, but they had vanished again. He tries to imagine what it could mean, and when Hesu asks, he replies that it's symmetrical. The girl looks confused, so In-sung draws on the ground showing the labyrinth and themselves. Because the map is symmetrical, the entrance and exit can be swapped without the participants knowing. Hesu complains that it's cheating, and In-sung says that's exactly the kind of place they're in. Socrates appears and says he's really understood. In-sung asks why he didn't say anything if he knew, and the philosopher explains he can't give spoilers. It's a serious sin. The boy assumes that's why he possessed his body earlier to avoid running, and the chat complains he's annoying. In-sung suggests they retrace their steps, and Hesu says it's possible since she memorized everything. From this point though, it's useless if the entrance and exit are swapped again. A massive plaque suddenly appears, warning them that they can't remain at the entrance too long or they'll enrage the Great Spectre. In-sung repeats the words and asks what the hell that's supposed to mean. The system announces that the moon is growing weaker and monsters will move more freely. If they want to survive, they must run toward the hole in the center. For the Great Spectre has been revived, revealing a colossal creature at the heart of a labyrinth. In-sung asks if they really expect him to fight that thing. The chat comments that it will never be defeated, saying that this is the difference between hard and intermediate difficulty, while Hesu suggests they run. She tells him to head toward the hole in the center if they want to survive, and Socrates calls out to his streamer, saying that if he runs, he'll possess his body again. Zombies rise from the ground and Hesu pulls him along to run. On the way, the two of them stop at the center of a thicket. In-sung mutters that it's too exhausting to keep this up, but something feels strange and Hesu asks what. The protagonist explains that the moon has seemed smaller since they were at the entrance. Hesu agrees and Socrates asks to be teleported. He questions if In-sung hasn't noticed something. In-sung realizes the monsters can't step into this area. He answers that he understands because the 10 symbols of longevity, the theme here, must be the moon. The chat calls him crazy, but the protagonist explains that they began moving more freely as the light weakened. They can't come here because the light shines directly. But it isn't the true moon, and since it's false, its shape doesn't change with time. Hesu says that even if the shape doesn't change, the light has grown dimmer, and In-sung adds that he thinks it's related to the moon growing larger. The specter appears before them. Hesu asks what they should do, and In-sung says there's a way. She presses him for an answer, and the boy explains the moon is larger, but the light shining from it grows weaker. It's like a lantern covered by several layers of bags. Hesu asks what would happen if they remove them. The specter stretches out its hand, which turns into tentacles that grab the girl. It pulls her close to its body, and Hesu struggles to resist. She drags her sword into the tentacle, only to be hurled to the ground. The girl is thrown flying, and In-sung asks if she's alright. The boy thinks it makes no sense for him to deal with this monster in the first place, so he raises his spear and declares that he'll strike the moon. The boy takes the stance of a professional thrower and hurls his weapon toward the sky. The tip of the blade finally touches the moon, but it's repelled, driven back down into the ground. He questions if his spear is too weak as the darkness thickens around them. Gripping his spear tightly, he hears the chat saying he should start saying his goodbyes. Socrates tells him to buy the strongest one of all, and In-sung asks him to just gift it. The philosopher replies that he'll only give balloons if the boy's ideas prove their worth. If he can't end this dungeon, then it will end him. In-sung looks at Hesu lying on the ground and says he doesn't know anymore as he readies his stance again. This time, he hurls it at the monster. The Great Spectre roars as it's struck, the blade driving closer to its head, while the chat comments that he's strong. The weapon nears the creature's eye, only to shatter against its forehead. In-sung stares nervously as the chat says it's useless and mocks that maybe the Great Spectre is just a great loser. The Spectre lashes its tentacles for the protagonist to bind him. He dodges, throwing his body to the side. Then he steadies himself and picks up Hesu's sword. He slashes the tentacle in two while the chat says this is the last attempt. The creature roars again, bellowing as it gathers blood in its mouth. In-sung activates his focus enhancement skill and warns that he doesn't know what will happen, but something is about to unfold here. The protagonist charges forward, saying that even if it's a monster, it must have a weak point and he'll cut it down with his sword. Dodging the strikes of the tentacles, he leaps upward. In-sung swings his sword side to side, slicing through the tentacles. He reflects that he's almost there, right in front of its weak point. The monster lashes out with its tentacles, grabbing the boy and yanking him backward. Then it slams him into the ground, while In-sung thinks that he used his strength and focus, yet felt nothing afterward. He draws his sword and slashes downward, but blood continues to gush from his mouth as he crashes against the floor. The creature rises and throws him down once again. The chat comments that this must be the limit of how far the protagonist can go, as he rolls across the ground. He comes to rest beside Heisu, and the chat jokes that she's just pretending to be dead. The monsters surround the two of them, and his fans complain that time is running out. In-sung spits blood, unconscious, but his heart beats differently this time. The Iron Will skill activates, and he rises to his feet. The system announces that all physical damage will now be reversed. For 3 minutes, all physical stats will be doubled. In-sung asks if he came back to life after nearly falling into hell, while the chat cheers for a good fight now. The system warns that all the damage will return after 3 minutes. In-sung thinks that even with this power, he can't kill that bastard Spectre. He needs a way to strike the moon. The creature's tentacles whip toward him, but the protagonist simply slashes them apart with ease. The monster roars again, writhing in pain. In-sung thinks the sword was made for cutting, not piercing the moon. He needs the indestructible spear. He begs Socrates to hand over the item. Socrates hides behind the zombies, saying the brat is trying to make him lose. In-sung drops to his knees, asking if he's really just going to die here. But suddenly, he receives a gift and wonders who it's from. Instant Beauty donates 1,200 balloons to the protagonist, and he turns toward Heisu. The girl raises her thumb despite the pain in her stomach. She says that even if they die here, they still have to try to defeat this stupid dungeon, and thinks that it's up to him. The system announces that Iron Will remain active for another 30 minutes, and Heisu asks for the sword. She'll handle the monsters while he must hurry and throw the spear, slicing through a few tentacles. The protagonist buys the item listed in the shop, and the system notifies him. He receives the golden spear, with an attack power of 14. He slaps his own face, then charges forward as the chat says he's heading to the wrong place. Heisu calls out to him as the Great Spectre swings its hand. In-sung dodges and leaps onto the monster's arm. He climbs upward, centimeter by centimeter, scaling his body. Reaching its shoulder, he dodges its attacks. In-sung steadies himself, then leaps toward its head. He uses the surface as his springboard for his final jump. He readies his spear for the throw, gripping it tightly before hurling it. Heisu realizes he wants to get as close to the moon as possible. The spear soars higher and higher as the Great Spectre opens its mouth. The weapon strikes the moon, beginning to fracture it into countless pieces. The Spectre stares at the moon as it shatters, revealing the true one behind it. His chat comments that the moon was shining brighter because the shell had gotten thinner. Everyone there watches in awe at the protagonist's power. The zombies roar as they charge forward, and In-sung lands on the ground. He reflects that even the Great Spectre was struggling to withstand the full intensity of the moonlight. The turtle on his shoulder makes a small noise. In-sung places it on the ground, saying that all of this was its meal. The creature then begins absorbing the body of the Great Spectre bit by bit. The system notifies them that Dungeon 5 has been cleared. The turtle can now evolve into the advanced grade, and the protagonist has obtained the Great Spectre Stone. In-sung repeats this in surprise and becomes enveloped in golden energy. The system reminds him that there are only 5 seconds left before his Iron Will runs out, and the young man thinks he will lose his life no matter what. But it had been fun, and his chat says he won a battle that was already lost. That's when he remembers vitality, and that he still has the celestial bamboo fruit. The young man eats a piece, and the system notifies the end of the ability. In-sung drops to his knees, feeling pain in every corner of his body. He spits blood, groaning from the suffering, and collapses unconscious on the ground. Heisu runs toward him, worried. Socrates touches his neck, confirming that the protagonist is still alive. Plato asks what on earth had just happened there. A few hours later, In-sung rises, screaming in shock. His chat comments that he was really lucky to survive that. The protagonist looks at his wrist, where the turtle had been healing him the whole time. Socrates tells him he was unconscious for an entire day, and the chat says it's time for the legend to continue. It was a miracle he managed to fight the Great Spectre, considered elite even among the advanced grade, and In-sung thinks that he managed to obtain its essence. He opens his inventory and sees the Soul Stone item, which allows him to acquire one of the Great Spectre's abilities at random. The young man asks if Socrates knows where he can get a soul extractor. Socrates replies that it's in the next room of the dungeon, and the chat grows excited. In-sung asks if he can say that much, and Socrates responds that telling him to go to a cafe and drink coffee wasn't exactly a spoiler. The protagonist comments that the evolution stone was essential for survival, and nothing came for free. He had also leveled up his Iron Will, but thinks he would rather avoid using it again. Socrates congratulates In-sung on a job well done. He admits he was surprised at such a level of difficulty, and the protagonist replies that you only live once. But he wonders where Heisu could be, and it was clear that after clearing that room, she had gone to the next one. Socrates explains that the girl was waiting at the exit. He reminds In-sung that she had said it was bad to leave someone unconscious alone, and since she cleared the dungeon with his help, she would give him first place. Socrates says that's what she had said, and it was truly unexpected. At the exit, Heisu calls out to him and tells him she thought he would lose his life this time, but he managed to endure. And beyond that, he was able to breathe thanks to mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. In-sung repeats this, stunned, but Heisu clarifies that it was Socrates who gave it to him. And on top of that, he will take first place, so they should hurry to the next room. In-sung asks if she really will give him first place, and the girl tells him to go before she changes her mind. It had been a while since she had been busy listening to the elder. Socrates scolds Plato, and the chat jokes that old men always have too much to say. In-sung says it would be good to see her again, and the girl agrees. Plato tells him to survive, and the protagonist replies that he will do his best. Heading to the exit platform, the bluish aura carries him far away. The system notifies that he has entered room 6, and a total of 40 people can go there. In-sung looks impressed at another system announcement. It states that the dungeon had been cleared on the highest difficulty for the first time in 1,351 years by Yamra in the special stage, and fans received discounts. His chat erupts saying they had dreamed of this day and would wash his feet now. Socrates gifts 100 balloons to the protagonist. The chat asks if there were no horses in this game, calling In-sung adorable. His system rewards him with a coupon for 50% off in the store for being the first to enter the room. In-sung thinks he needs to choose a door now, and the chat urges him to go for the red one. The young man chooses the door, thinking the result wouldn't change no matter what he picked. The shop was now accessible because he had entered the Red City. In-sung shouts that everything being red was terrifying. He looks at the turtle and comments that it should rest in the inventory since there was no clue about the current situation. A blacksmith comes out of his house and notices the protagonist. Furious, he calls him a bastard and charges toward him. In-sung thinks the man is truly massive and extremely fast as he closes in. The protagonist manages to dodge his fist, and the blacksmith says he'll do it 10 more times for trying to run away. Now he's looking for a fight, while the chat laughs at In-sung's situation. In-sung thinks he has no time to fight this crazy guy and decides to run. As he moves, he spots the shop. He can only buy tonics, sleeping pills, and psychotherapy, and the protagonist says he doesn't know how to deal with this. The blacksmith grabs his shirt and lifts him high up. He slams him into the ground, and In-sung struggles to get up. The blacksmith tells him not to forget the favor he did, and In-sung questions when that was. He explains that he wanted to bring a knife but brought a bottle instead, then smashes it on the boy's head. The blacksmith yells that he'll hit him 20 more times on his tab and strikes with the bottle again. In-sung can barely defend himself with the spear and wonders why he can't resist. The blacksmith grows even angrier, and the protagonist tries to say he has the wrong person, that he's just a spirit. The man raises the bottle again, and In-sung begs for strength in his hands. His spear slips down the fat man's back, and his head is struck once more by the bottle. In-sung loses consciousness, and the fat man drags him inside the house. He then starts slicing a cucumber and tossing it into a hot pan to cook. In-sung lies asleep on the kitchen table. Then he suddenly wakes up with his head aching and tries to recognize the place. The blacksmith suddenly appears in the same room, and the chat thinks he must be panicking now. The fat man orders the protagonist to eat the rice. He declares that from now on, he'll have 3 meals a day, while In-sung wonders how they don't even know each other. But the rice looked delicious, and he wonders if he could cure this guy's brain with the psychotherapy available at the shop. The blacksmith orders him to eat, and the protagonist accepts, bringing a spoonful of rice to his mouth. Suddenly, the blacksmith realizes something, and In-sung smiles at him. Then he collapses forward, his head hitting the table, unconscious. In-sung thinks that sleeping pills were put into his food while he was distracted. But he wonders how he can't handle this old man when he managed to defeat the Great Spectre. It seemed as if it had been intentionally designed that way, and besides, he needed to get out of there first. In-sung notices that the door won't open, nor the windows. He tries to use a chair from the table to strike at them, but it only produces dust, and the chair rebounds, hitting him on the head. He falls to the ground, groaning in pain, and the protagonist mutters that he probably has about 2 months left to live. The protagonist decides to first contact Instant Beauty, but the system notifies him that Jesus cannot receive messages right now. In-sung comments that she must have entered the blue door and grabs a bottle, saying that before leaving this place, he should make that cursed blacksmith suffer, raising his arm to strike his head. But a barrier blocks him, and the system alerts that the clan's protection has been activated. In-sung wonders what that could be and tries to strike multiple times, but it seems a spell had been cast over that stall. In-sung knocks the rice onto the table and picks up the plate, until he notices a system notification. It informs him that the plate is actually a soul extractor capable of drawing abilities out. The young man remembers the soul stone in the Great Spectre. He places the stone onto the plate, and the soul begins to be extracted. The system announces that the hunting instinct ability has been acquired and tells him to check the status window. This ability allowed him to detect life force within a range of 5 meters. In-sung reflects that it isn't anything special and wonders why he feels so biased about it. There's nothing remarkable there, just the kitchen, and he questions what kind of room this was. Opening the door, he notices there was no lock. The young man is stunned when he comes face to face with all kinds of equipment. The system notifies that Dungeon 6 is a village that provides supplies for clan members. In-sung thinks these items are very useful. He notices that the reinforced adamant spear costs 3,000 balloons. Complaining that the glass is blocking him, the chat comments that it looked like a peaceful black market. In-sung says it had a scratch and the weapon was definitely his, but that didn't mean he had stolen them all. He looks back, grabs the bottle, and says it doesn't count as stealing if he's taking what's his. He strikes the glass, shouting that it's all because of his reinforced adamant spear. Swinging with all of his strength, the bottle rebounds into his own face. In-sung collapses to the ground in pain, and the system asks if he wants to buy the spear. The 50% discount from the village shop is then applied, and the spear is purchased for only 1,500 balloons. He gets back up, saying it was too irritating and better to finish this quickly. He could explore this place afterward. The young man notices something different and says that crystal was expensive for no reason, wondering how it could cost more than his spear. But there was no one who would buy something so useless. It was just a bad item. He spots the Advanced Evolution Stone priced at 500 balloons and admits there were good things there. The little turtle would just have to wait a bit longer. The system announces that the Great Spectre's hunting instinct has activated and a life force has been detected within range. In-sung suddenly turns as the bottle strikes his head. The blacksmith knocks him out cold on the spot. The next day, he adds more food, saying he'll give him another dish if he doesn't finish that one. In-sung complains that it's fried rice again today, and the blacksmith replies it will be the same tomorrow. And you should already know that since he'll be spending the rest of his life here. In-sung asks if they can't cook different types of rice, and the blacksmith tells him to be grateful for what he's getting. He hands him the spoon, saying if he won't eat it, then just make sure to fill his stomach. The protagonist reflects that this marks his 14th day here. In-sung asks if they can at least eat on separate plates like before, but the blacksmith warns him he'll try using sleeping pills again. Night passes and In-sung asks if he can wash the dishes, but the blacksmith says he's in charge of the kitchen. Then he tosses a rag at the protagonist's face, telling him to wash the floor. In-sung moves around cleaning everything. The system notifies that another person has entered the dungeon and up to 55 people can now join. In-sung thinks that makes 5 of them now, and it's not his turn to act yet. He then asks what's for dinner, and the blacksmith grumbles that he's not his servant. He's in charge of the kitchen, and the protagonist can't do anything about it. He should know it'll be red pepper rice for dinner, and In-sung simply agrees. He then sits down to reflect on the sofa. He thinks that he learned how to open the front door by watching the old man while he stayed there. The red village must have been created with one of the symbols of longevity. But since this was the Red Village, it was impossible for the dungeon to have 2 themes. His clue was that both the blue and red villages existed. So he reaches the conclusion that together they form purple. In-sung realizes what it must be and thinks it's amethyst, since its color is purple. He should calm down since he might find a use for this amethyst after buying it, but he needed to confirm something first. The next day in the house, the blacksmith makes more rice. In-sung calls out to the chief, but the blacksmith gets annoyed at this. The protagonist asks if he knows about clan protection. The old man turns, demanding he explain how he knew those words. In-sung says it was from the time he slipped him sleeping pills and heard the words about the clan's protection being activated. The blacksmith says this bastard is trying to send him to his grave. In-sung answers that the blacksmith is still alive here. He wants to know what this clan protection thing is, while the blacksmith explains it was a sad legend about an alliance between villages. In-sung asks what kind of legend, but the blacksmith replies he doesn't believe in it, and that bastard should eat some rice. The protagonist asks what kind they had today, but the blacksmith tells him he should eat whatever is given. In-sung retorts that the blacksmith should eat it, and the old man says he will be the first to eat. The protagonist comments that he must have thought of sleeping pills again. The blacksmith grabs a bottle and says they'll talk after he eats. In-sung eats without complaint, and the blacksmith just accepts it. So they eat together until the old man collapses on the table, unconscious. The chat is surprised by this, and the turtle comes walking out of the kitchen. In-sung picks it up in his hand and tells it did well. He had ordered little Guai to slip sleeping pills into the rice, and the chat wonders since they both ate the same rice. The young man takes out the tonic in his hand, showing he won't sleep for the next 24 hours. He feels like he won't fall asleep even if he grows drowsy. In-sung reflects that now he'll buy the amethyst and think of it that way, but he wants to buy one more thing first. He buys the Advanced Evolution Stones. The protagonist says he'll use them later since the old man might wake up at any moment. Now he goes to buy the amethyst, but notices his reinforced adamant spear isn't there. The young man thinks he made that choice and should proceed with the amethyst. But he thinks that if the amethyst isn't the item that means escape, then his fans will leave, everything will end, and he'll be stuck eating fried rice forever. The system asks if he wants to buy the amethyst, saying it can be purchased for 2,000 balloons with a discount. He stops hesitating, saying that's it, he just needs to believe. Now he has to figure out how to use it, while the chat says he really hasn't given up. In-sung looks at the amethyst and thinks he needs to get out of here, but he doesn't find a way and wonders what he should try. Other than just shaking it, he flips the amethyst stone. In-sung questions why it isn't working, why it isn't sending him back. He sighs a little as the blacksmith starts regaining consciousness. The blacksmith lifts his face from the rice and In-sung says he had started. There's nothing left in the shop, and he opens it again to see what else he can buy. In-sung notices that if he reads the first letters, there's a sequence, and the chat says he finally realized it. The protagonist thinks the price must be the order to use, so he moves it 4 times to the right and 6 to the left. The old man begins to lift his head, fully aware now. He says the protagonist has taken the amethyst, and In-sung reflects that it's not working, and you should turn it left and right again. The blacksmith tries to strike him, yelling at him to receive punishment, but In-sung dodges the blow and moves it 4 times to the right. The blacksmith swings again, and the protagonist evades, turning it 6 times to the left. Finally, the old man lifts his foot and slams it into the boy's chest, hurling him as far as he can. While in the air, In-sung spins the amethyst 9 times to the right. As the blacksmith approaches, he says the only option left is to stay there and eat fried rice forever. The young man repeats the word food, and the system announces that the path to Dungeon 7 has been opened. He finds himself on the platform and thanks him for the food, while his chat comments that this is his 4th consecutive first place. The protagonist disappears from the place, and the blacksmith curses, saying he's alone again. Then he receives a notification that So Hwang has entered the dungeon, leaving only 54 people who can remain. The red door opens, and the blacksmith charges toward that bastard, while the man tries to resist. The system announces that he was the first to enter room 7, that he will receive a skill box, and that up to 39 more people may enter. In-sung looks around thinking it's a small room and that it must be a training gym. The young man notices the red door, and the system warns that a monster waits on the other side, so he needs to grow stronger in order to escape. In-sung concludes that it must be a one-on-one battle against the boss. He sits down on the bench press and curses the dungeon. He thinks he should use this exercise to strengthen himself. It was like a full-on prison camp, and they even provided supplies. But first, he wanted to check his random skill. The young man thinks he doesn't feel anything unusual upon receiving it, and the chat calls him a complete pervert. The skill was equipment enhancement, allowing him to grow stronger in proportion to the power of his gear. So he opens his inventory and places the turtle on the ground, announcing that it's time for Little Boy to evolve. He had to choose between the earth attribute or water, and the young man thinks he cannot afford to choose wrong. But clearly it had to be water, so he selects it. Energy floods the stone, and the system states that Little Boy will evolve into the advanced water grade. It adds that he will revert to normal if he runs out of energy, that the same evolution cannot be reused, and that he may weaken somewhat after evolving. The turtle's new form is blue, with abilities to manipulate water as part of its body and to summon divine water. The protagonist says Little Wei has grown larger, and the chat makes a Pokemon Squirtle reference. In-sung says that without any particular reason, water is the attribute that best fits a turtle, and so he sends it back into his inventory. Another notification appears, this time a message from someone in the first hub. Lenny of the Blood Clan introduces herself, saying she has always watched Lord In-sung, who takes the lead, and that they are the top guild recognized by Hades. They could only send messages because the Red Village is under their administration. In-sung thinks that means the Red Village is property of the Blood Clan, and that's what the clan blessing notification meant. Lenny says that all guilds seek to escape the dungeon and asks him to join them, promising that all answers to his questions lie in Hub 1. The protagonist thinks that escaping from Room 10 leads to Central Point 1. She reminds him that the Blood Clan is a famous place, since he even received an invitation, and the chat comments that joining would make him one of the best. They want to know more about the Blue Village and say they will contact Instant Beauty there. The protagonist decides to think about that later, because what he needs now is to escape from Room 7 of the dungeon. The system announces that life force has been detected nearby, and the Great Spectre's hunting instinct is activated. In-sung realizes there's a monster behind the door, and the notification asks if he wants to enter, warning that he cannot return if more than 5 minutes pass. A teleportation pad appears beneath his feet, and the protagonist is warped away. In-sung appears in another place and is stunned by the monster before him. It looked like a lion, but with a scorpion's tail. The protagonist wonders if this was the weak chimera and doesn't understand what could possibly be weak about it, especially since his live stream had just been shut off. So he decides to open the shop, seeing advanced food and a metal shovel. In-sung questions this, and the chat mocks him for not being able to buy items. He complains that he should have recovered his reinforced adamant spear instead of being stuck with this inferior one. So he has to remain cautious. The young man moves slowly to the side of the chimera. He notices its nose twitch slightly. The protagonist trembles in fear as the creature moves its mouth. In-sung freezes, paralyzed, and the chat comments how agonizing it is to watch. He activates enhanced effort, and the suffocating pressure vanishes. The protagonist's mind clears, and he loses the fear of moving. Vines grow across the ground, and it looks like an ancient gladiator's arena, with drops of water falling around. But it is cold there, while one of his fans donates 10 balloons, asking if he will become a legend, and the system warns he has 2 minutes to escape. He decides not to move this time and to return after the 2 minutes with a plan. Commander Doom Junwei is removed from the channel because of his inactivity, and the protagonist asks what that means. His chat explains it happens if you don't contribute voluntarily, and then Linny joins the channel. She sends an emergency alert just as the chimera awakens. The creature roars as loud as it can, forcing the protagonist back. The lion attacks with its claws. In-sung turns and dodges the strike. He complains that this is terrifying, and Linny sends 100 balloons, telling him to keep it up. In-sung swings his spear and dodges another strike from the monster's paw, with only 1 minute left before the teleport. The Chimera charges again, rushing straight at him. He thinks he was already running before things got boring. The protagonist says he will just mark the spot and make a quick run. The Chimera lunges once more, and the protagonist notices an opening on its belly. He drops low to the ground and activates weapon enhancement. Claiming he is the one who was able to pierce the moon, he strikes the Chimera's armor, but the blow fails to penetrate with enough force. The spear hits only metal, and the chat comments that this was the weak monster for him, its body made of iron. That creature glares at the protagonist with murderous intent. Then it swings its paw, ready to take his life. In-sung is thrown far back and rolls across the ground. The Chimera roars again, and the protagonist rises. He falls to his knees, looking down, depressed. He wonders what he should do, realizing he must run quickly. The system says 5 minutes have passed and asks if he wants to return to the waiting room. He accepts. In-sung steps onto the teleport pad and vanishes as the Chimera's claws crash down. The young man reappears kneeling in the training gym. The system declares that he failed the first attempt and that the weakened Chimera will recover some of its life. In-sung repeats this in frustration, and the system says the beloved system has healed the monster. He complains that this is horrible and that he'll never win if he keeps losing to that beast. But he had a small idea about the layout and managed to catch a glimpse of the exit door. So he pulls little Guai out of his inventory and asks him to heal him. The turtle radiates energy, and the system notes that Lil Guai is applying his tricks. Lenny donates 100 balloons to the protagonist, saying he cleared Dungeon 5 with all rewards, even though she heard he didn't have enough fans. The protagonist perks up, and she adds it's because he's actually amazing. He thanks the woman for that. The chat comments that the Blood Clan is flaunting its wealth, and Lenny says everyone is invited to watch the stream. In-sung thinks strange things have started happening suddenly, and Socrates is about to be crowned as #1 fan. The philosopher donates 100 balloons, saying someone had been talking badly about him behind his back. Lenny asks if this is the protagonist's manager and if he's really sure he's his biggest fan. Socrates sends another 100 balloons, insisting he's been #1 ever since the rookie mentioned it, and Lenny tells him not to worsen his financial troubles. The protagonist is impressed by this. Socrates declares that he should look closely, that his #1 fan isn't afraid to pay, making him the greatest of all. In-sung thanks him for everything and says he'll give it his all. The system notifies that all of his stats have been increased by 1%, and his body begins to change. An aura envelops the protagonist. Hours later, he is bench pressing heavy weight. It was an immense load, pushing him to his limits. After that, he performs a squat with the same weight on his back, and the chat is completely astonished. In-sung endures the weight and lowers himself as far as he can. Then he drops it when his hands begin to ache. He tosses some protein powder into his mouth and gulps it down with water. Lenny donates 50 balloons, saying she worked hard today too, and In-sung thanks her for it. But then he turns and says it's time to go in. He came with a plan: build muscle with exercise and protein, lure the Chimera with high-quality feed, and use that window to sprint in the opposite direction. Still wondering why the shop even sold a shovel, he decides that's exactly what he will do. The system asks if he wants to enter, and the protagonist confirms. Teleported in front of the Chimera, he admits he's still scared despite having a plan. He grips the spear tightly in his hand and dares the Chimera to come at him. The Chimera obeys the command and charges at him, trying to slash with its claw. In-sung pulls something from his inventory and orders the creature to eat it. He throws the high-quality feed and is surprised. The monster stops its attack to go eat the food. In-sung thanks it for that and thinks he can finally run toward the exit. So he dashes in that direction, but the Chimera turns its furious face toward him. The protagonist panics at the sight, trying to move silently so as not to anger the beast further. He reflects that it should have kept eating, but it was far too sensitive. Then he sighs in relief, saying it finally returned to eating. It seemed that the countless cavities in its body shrank as it devoured the feed. He shouts that it's time to try again, drawing the Chimera's attention. The protagonist swallows hard but continues running toward the door. The Chimera charges once again, ready to slash with its claws. The claws rake across the protagonist's back, but he falls through the gate just in time. The young man exhales, saying he would have been badly wounded if it had been a moment later, but the chat reminds him not to forget this. Then In-sung realizes there was no actual door there, he couldn't escape. The Chimera appears at the entrance, staring him down. He jokes that it can't come inside. Then he orders Lil Guai to heal his wounds. The Chimera opens its mouth and unleashes fire at him. The protagonist tries to dodge, thinking a fire breath like that was insane. But then he notices his head was on fire. His decision is to sprint back and forth. The Chimera prepares another burst of fire against him, but he tosses more feed, laughing as he orders it to eat. The Chimera shuts its mouth and quickly turns to devour the food. The protagonist tells Little Guai to hurry up and places the evolution stone on the ground. The system flashes several warnings and In-sung growls that he knows, telling it to hurry. Young Guai evolves and prepares a water orb to stop his hair from burning further. The water splashes onto the protagonist's head, revealing he was now bald. In-sung trembles in fear, standing by the wall, while the Chimera feeds on the rations. The Chimera roars again, and In-sung complies, throwing more food at it. Back in the training gym, the young man cries in front of the mirror. Socrates donates 10 balloons, saying there was a way to restore his hair. The protagonist's hope rises and he asks if it's really possible. But Socrates tells him to return to room 2 and buy growth accelerators. In-sung sits on the ground, bobbing his head up and down, sobbing. When he touches his scalp, he feels immense pain, making him cry even more. Little Guai licks his head, and In-sung mutters that this dungeon is a curse, while the system notifies him of his first failure since the chimera had grown stronger. He doesn't feel any stronger than last time, but the earth beneath him had cracked. On top of that, the vines had withered, and the chimera truly was the same. With no ideas left, it would be hard to win now. Lenny says that Lord In-sung could use his amethyst, and the protagonist is shocked. The girl explains that the amethyst carries her clan's blessing and that he can focus on it. The protagonist pulls the stone out of his inventory. Then he activates the level 3 focus enhancement skill. The amethyst increases his vitality, calms him, and his heart begins to find peace. The system asks if he wants to re-enter room 7. In-sung says he will finish this once and for all, and that it should stay quiet while he eats his food. But the system reminds him that he has none left. He used it all last time. The chimera unleashes a deafening roar. In-sung mutters that he'll eat a little more and should wait a minute, but the system warns that he cannot buy anything inside the arena and must face the chimera. In-sung asks for one more minute, begging for time. He runs while the chimera chases after him. The protagonist leaps forward as the monster swings its claw. Crouching on the ground, the protagonist is taken aback. That chimera unleashes another burst of fire. His solution to avoid the strike is to drop flat on the ground. He says he just wants to do a bit of investigation and wonders if he can survive for 5 minutes like this. In-sung digs his foot into the ground and the hunting instinct ability of the Great Spectre activates. He questions this, realizing it only triggers when life force is detected within 5 meters of the user. The young man glances back, noticing the burst of fire. He keeps running from it and even climbs the walls of the Colosseum. In-sung loops around and runs in another direction, while the chat is impressed by his speed. The chimera charges toward him and tries to strike with its scorpion tail. The system notifies him that 5 minutes have passed and asks if he wants to return. That creature swings its tail at him, and the protagonist says he wants to leave quickly. Once again, the platform appears and the young man vanishes. In-sung reappears in the gym and thinks he almost lost his life, but in return, he found a clue. So he should recover using the amethyst first and eat something. The young man falls asleep on the bench press, and his chat says he must have spent his school life the same way. A few days pass, and In-sung says he has bought enough feed. His ability detected traces of life force last time. Something was inside the chimera, and he had to go back to find it. Back in the arena, the chimera charges at him. In-sung tosses the feed to the massive beast. The chimera sniffs it, turns, and begins eating, and In-sung says there was something there. The Great Spectre's instincts suddenly activate. In-sung begins digging where he feels the presence. He thinks there must be a reason the shop sold a shovel, and the answer must lie beneath. That ruined battlefield had once been ground that turned to mud. The protagonist hears a sound and throws more feed to the chimera. In-sung digs deeper into the hole, while the chat jokes that he can't sell dirt if he keeps working like that. He keeps shoveling with all his strength. And after 5 minutes, he returns to the gym. In-sung thinks it has been 3 days since he started digging. The chimera doesn't care about his actions as long as he's underground, and that 5-meter range was broader than he expected. He keeps digging for a while until his shovel strikes stone. In-sung asks if this was finally it, if he had dug it up. He is shocked when he comes face to face with the item. It was the herb of immortality, which absorbs life energy from the surroundings to extend lifespan, and it works faster the closer it is to its target. The protagonist repeats this, holding it in his hand as the herb begins to absorb. He drops it immediately when he feels the effects, complaining that his hand had turned old. He quickly grabs the amethyst from his inventory, noticing that his hand returns to normal. In-sung receives a notification that someone named Hubbard has entered room 7, leaving only 38 more spots. He thinks he has never seen him in the rankings before and really expected Hisu to be the one to take second place. The chat seems to be big fans of him, so the protagonist decides to go meet him. In the training room, a man comments that this was Dungeon 7, where one escapes by becoming stronger, until he notices a notification from In-sung welcoming him. Hubbard smiles and repeats his name. A few minutes later, In-sung receives congratulations for passing, though he doesn't quite understand. Hubbard says he has accepted In-sung as his student, and that his initiation ceremony will be held on March 2nd. The protagonist calls him crazy, wondering if it's because he was beaten up by the old man. Hubbard tells the protagonist to come to him if there's anything he wants to ask. In-sung closes the chat window and says not to waste time on trivial things. In the gym, Hubbard mutters that the rookies these days are really shy, so he should get serious. Back in the cave, Lenny sends 100 balloons to In-sung, congratulating him for finding something so complicated. The young man wonders if this was some kind of rare item, and the chat tells him to go ahead and sell a herb. He realizes it and shouts that the theme of room 7 was the herb of immortality, and he was certain it would be useful in this situation. The protagonist takes the amethyst and slips it into his pocket first. Then he reaches for the herb and grabs it. He opens the vial that contained it, saying it truly was a very powerful energy. He was grateful the amethyst had stopped the aging in some parts of his body. The young man grabs his clothing and tears a strip. Outside the cave, little Gui pokes his head out. He looks around and the chat comments that he looks like a meerkat. In-sung climbs out of the hole with his spear and notes he can't see the chimera. But the Great Spectre's hunting instinct suddenly activates. Something strikes from above, a chimera using its wings. In-sung instinctively thrusts his spear, revealing that the herb of immortality was stuck on the tip as it drives toward the chimera's mouth. The monster leaps back and hovers, trying to dodge the attack. In-sung says it must be aware of the herb of immortality, since the place seemed more devastated each time he entered, and the chimera's increasing strength with each failure was due to it absorbing energy from the herb buried in the ground. The creature gathers fire in its mouth, and In-sung braces himself while ordering the turtle to unleash water. Little Gwit charges a water ore between his horns and launches it, clashing with the chimera's fire. His chat comments that it looks like a pet battle. The chimera recoils and everyone cheers, hoping it won't be killed. In-sung swings his spear side to side, using his level 3 focus enhancement. He declares that the reason it ate slowly wasn't because its teeth decayed, but because of stupid inflammation. The equipment enhancement activates and In-sung hurls his spear. The blade, carrying the herb of immortality, pierces the back of the monster's throat. It begins to disintegrate and the protagonist gapes in shock. It had turned into nothing but the skeleton of the chimera radiating an aura. The protagonist retrieves his spear and approaches the skull, pulling something from the monster's mouth. The system notifies him that he is absorbing the chimera's soul essence, and his physical powers increase. The chimera's soul essence is completely absorbed. Something taps against the protagonist's foot, and he picks it up. It is revealed to be the tooth of the weak chimera, renowned for its toughness. In-sung says his skill levels also increase, with weapon enhancement reaching level 2 and focus enhancement reaching level 4. The system opens the door, announcing that he has cleared room 7 and may proceed to the next. In-sung gives thanks and continues walking without looking back, repeating that he will escape this cursed dungeon. The system announces that the streamer Please Save was the first to enter room 7 and will receive an F-rank skill box. In-sung mutters that he really is talented for always taking first place, while his chat complains that he's just bragging. Suddenly, the protagonist's gravitational axis is inverted, sending him crashing to the ground, and when he looks forward, he comes face to face with a herd of deer. In room 8 was a place where the protagonist had to keep 6 deer alive from a plague for the next portal to appear. In-sung reflects that there were a few of them in this small space, and deer are the commanders among the 10 symbols of longevity. He notices the hexagon on the floor and says the next one will appear after 6 days. But for some reason, this deer was hitting him. He pets the animal, saying it isn't good and should stop now. But he gets kicked in the groin. In-sung twists back and forth in pain, thinking he had lost all dignity, and it was infuriating. He gets back up, asking why they couldn't get along and act like friends. The deer turn and run away from him. In-sung sighs, saying there must be a reason for this, and the chat asks if they can smell the chimera on him. The protagonist gets embarrassed, asking how he could take a bath in front of everyone, but the chat tells him to pause the stream. In-sung wonders if he really could do that, since he hadn't done it once since arriving here. The stream is paused, and little Gui splashes water for the protagonist to bathe. He says it was a lot of fun, and that he was right to choose the water attribute. He turns the stream back on, saying he's ready, and the chat points out that his bald head is shining. In-sung calls the deer over to him. The animals catch his scent and approach him without complaint. In-sung strokes their heads, and the chat notes that their earlier behavior was due to the bad smell. The protagonist notices that they seem pitiful for some reason. Then he notices a strange smell and wonders if it was gone because he bathed. He runs his hand over the deer's fur and notices a disgusting red blister. He realizes all the deer had the same thing. This must be the plague mentioned earlier, and they wanted him to keep the deer alive by curing the disease. He notices the chat saying it was hard to survive 4 days, but his mission lasted 6, and that explained the 6 deer this time, plus the hexagon. In-sung says he can tell the difficulty has increased since it went up from 4 to 6 days. He decides to check the shop first and only sees 2 things: plague cure and herbivore food. In-sung analyzes the options and buys 1 plague cure. He pours it onto the deer's skin and the wound heals, making the young man exclaim how fantastic it was. But the plague cure bottle is already empty. In-sung says he used it all to cure just 1 deer and thinks this will cost him all his balloons. If 1 treatment cost 50 and he had to do it for each of them, it would be a waste. And the chat says that's capitalism. The protagonist says he will first grow his viewership by raising his count. That's it. He finds a recommendation ticket costing 100 balloons, which doubles recommendations for 10 minutes. He says he got 947 recommendations and 1,000 were needed to raise his channel's level. This increase in score will bring him more fans, so he begs his fans for recommendations. The young man says that when he was poisoned in his world, a group of girls visited him, talking about a blind date and how it went. He acts out a girl saying that a medical student showed up in a Ford X, But it didn't happen on the same day, and In-sung questions it. He gets surprised, and the chat says he'll regret it if he stops there. Socrates donates 50 balloons, and everyone jokes that he had said before he wasn't interested in women, but was hiding it. Other people in his chat recommend him twice, and the number passes 1,000. Raising his streamer rank to Advanced 2. In-sung says he succeeded in his plan, and the system announces he can expand his viewer limit. 25 more people can now join the stream, and In-sung celebrates loudly. He says more fans are joining the show and notices the people entering the channel. In-sung introduces himself, saying he was in their service, while the chat comments that he was the one who had won 5 times in a row. The protagonist explains that he's currently in room 8 and must save 6 or more deer to clear the dungeon. He says he'll show them once he completes his plan. Pulling out the amethyst and the herb of immortality, while the chat asks how he has those. In-sung approaches the deer and places the amethyst on one of their heads. Then he puts the herb of immortality on that same deer's back, and the chat asks what he's doing. The herb begins to shine and the deer heals, while the chat notes that its suffering has disappeared. In-sung shouts that this was his true version. He notices that the deer looks angry and might lose its life. With the dawn of the second day, the protagonist wakes up hugging 2 deer. He says it was refreshing to live like this, shouting that he will start roll call and everyone should line up. In-sung begins counting, reaching a total of 12 deer out of 14. Looking into the corner of the room, he sees the deer lying lifeless on the ground. He comments that they had already lost their lives and he hoped it wouldn't happen so quickly, but he will start treating the deer right away. First, he'll use the cure on those with small blisters, because the others can be healed with the herb of immortality. It was the 3rd day there, and the protagonist raises a finger, announcing roll call. In-sung thinks another deer has died, but he notices that one didn't have blisters, and there were other deer lifeless now. In-sung says they lost their lives without having any blisters, wondering if someone came and killed them while he was sleeping. On the 4th day, the protagonist is wide awake without sleeping. The other deer stretch and play on the floor, but In-sung points his spear at their heads, telling them they must not leave his sight, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. On the 5th day, the protagonist's eyes turn bloodshot red. The deer moves and In-sung asks if it's hungry. They should eat this, he says, tossing out herbivore feed. The protagonist remarks that the last day is coming soon and none of them had died since then. He says he might lose either his life or his sleep and would rather sleep. Then he collapses as the chat laughs about his vanishing pupils and says not to wake him. A notification appears saying Hubbard has entered room 8. The protagonist suddenly wakes up and the chat tells him to keep an eye on the general. In his room, Hubbard says this semester seems to be about deer. In-sung comments that he came earlier than expected. Second place remarks that his student is very diligent, then congratulates him for advancing. In-sung thinks he managed to escape even faster without having the Great Spectre's instinct and wonders how the others were doing. Then he asks how Hubbard cleared room 7 so quickly. Hubbard says it's because he studied his manual thoroughly, and In-sung gets annoyed, noticing something in another direction. The deer collapses beside another. The young man asks how that happened. A goat disguised as a deer makes In-sung realize it was making a strange sound. That animal touches the side of the deer, causing it to spit blood and fall to the ground. In-sung demands to know what the hell this is, as all those deer died from a single attack. Grabbing the goat, he orders it to reveal what it really is. He notices the creature's true form and had no idea there was anything other than deer here. He should have noticed earlier, and he cannot spare it, since he still has 7 remaining after it killed the others. In-sung strikes the creature's back. The animal staggers from side to side, bleeding. It collapses onto the teleport hexagon leading to the next stage. In-sung apologizes for it, while the chat tells him not to forget this. But he wonders if it was really okay to leave it like that, since it was strange for it to die on top of the hexagon. In-sung approaches and says it would be better and move it elsewhere, until he realizes something is holding him back, because the animal was not moving. He complains that the damn thing was stuck and refused to move. In-sung wonders about this, and the chat jokes that it must be the threatening mountain goat. The protagonist questions if it was really threatening. His chat says that being the symbol of the devil, the goat was Satan, and he recalls hearing about that 666 circle. In-sung tells them to explain it in a way he can understand. The chat says those are just superstitions and useless talk. Since it doesn't matter, he's still first place. In-sung asks if there's anything more. The young man stares at the goat and notices that normally they have 4 teats, not 6 like this one. At the dawn of the 6th day, In-sung shouts that it doesn't matter because he managed to save 7 deer, so they should keep their word and open the hexagon. However, the ground splits open and the goat gushes blood. In-sung approaches nervously as the deer run away from the spot. The system notifies him that the hexagon of the primitive devil has been activated. The deer scream in terror and a dungeon operator joins the channel. The chat asks if they had ever seen this outsider character, and the operator says he was in charge of this dungeon. In-sung thinks about the operator, assuming each channel must have one. He asks the operator if it's alright since he needs confirmation that you should kill this crazy goat. The operator says it seems they've encountered a problem, and In-sung repeats his concern. The man replies that it will take some time to interpret what happened, since it was unexpected. In-sung says if that's all, then he's in trouble. The operator tells him to wait a bit, and In-sung wonders if he's really going to lose at this point. In the chat, the operator says that after investigating, he confirmed this abnormal goat was placed only in that room. In-sung gets irritated reading this, asking if he was the only one facing this kind of danger. But his live stream chat trembles and disappears from in front of him. A black smoke rises from the hexagon, filling the room. The deer run the other way in fear, while a figure emerges from the goat's body, making a strange sound. In-sung shouts in shock. The goat transforms into a demon. The young man steps back, asking who it is, but the demon speaks in a language he cannot understand. In-sung can't move as the demon begins to fade. The protagonist wonders what's happening, and the creature is sucked into the hexagon. It activates right after, and the portal leads to room 9. The young man drops to the ground, and the deer gather around him, trying to comfort him. In the castle of hell, the operator says the ceremony is complete and apologizes. The king of hell says he couldn't prevent it, and finding who was behind this was more important. Baphomet, a demon, had been resurrected, and he calls for Gangram. Baphomet, a demon, has been resurrected and calls for Gangram. The operator accepts the orders, and the king of hell says he must be weak from his recent resurrection. They must find him and finish him off. Gangram appears, stating he is under his command. The king of hell sips his tea, saying this would be a problem. But someone in the mirror calls for the king, who waves his hand in greeting. The man in the mirror says Baphomet has been reborn and that he heard about the anomaly placed in room 8. His king says he doesn't know what he's talking about. The River Styx TV operates the dungeon, and the king questions if there's a rat in the underworld. The old man in the mirror says others might get the wrong idea by misinterpreting his words, and that not many people knew of the ancient ritual. The Underworld's TV was handling the first zone, which was previously controlled by a celestial kingdom. They managed the demon's TV channel, and 4 of them must hold an emergency meeting to address this. The king of the Underworld says there's no need to make a fuss, since he was already executed once 666 years ago, but they need to know something about the person who performed the ritual. He puts down his cup while talking about this streamer, Save Me, saying there's no need to worry because he's just a victim. The old man says it's shameful and they should just send him to the underworld. But the king of the underworld questions if his Styx TV should keep an eye on that guy. The old guy in the mirror says he's leaving. In-sung was the first to enter room 9 and receives another skill book. Only 19 people can enter this room. The operator warns that there's a problem with his live stream, but it can resume once it's back to normal. The chat says the underworld can't interfere there. In-sung touches a wall, saying it was just normal. The chat says the Great Demon's hexagon has clearly changed, and now they have reason to believe it. In-sung says he'll just do his job since he doesn't know anything beyond that. It looked like an ordinary place, and he should just enter that well. It was a structure about 5 meters high, smaller than room 2. There was something on top, and it was now clear he needed to find a way to get there. In-sung crouches on the ground to prepare. His physical enhancement skill makes him run forward. He plants his foot on the ground and runs up the walls, but he ends up losing his footing and falls to the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. In-sung says it was much more than he imagined from outside the structure, but first he'll open the random skill box. The young man sighs after getting his skill and decides to buy some items. He sees there's water, bread, and the hexagon detector for room 9. He says it'll all be over once he finds the portal. He takes a magnifying glass out of his inventory. The young man says the arrow was pointing in the direction of the hexagon portal. His system says it's nowhere to be found. In-sung throws his jacket on the ground. He decides he's going to jump into the well and give it a try. In-sung hits the water and sinks into an ocean. He thinks it must be some kind of liquid, as it felt strangely heavier than water and seemed to be pushing him away. In-sung couldn't swim and had to move unless he wanted to lose his life. And he notices something from below, with piranhas advancing toward him. In-sung gets hit and thinks about how much it hurts. He needs to escape. His chat says the piranhas are enjoying the taste of him. The protagonist thinks he's really going to die now. He raises his arm where little Wee was. The turtle starts to guide him out of the water, helping the protagonist get out of the well. The young man thanks him. A few hours later, In-sung thinks he was pushed by the water. He wonders if the water can sense living things and pushes them away like zombies. This time, he wants to test it, opening his inventory. He thinks he'll increase his vitality with the rest of the bamboo fruit. Looking back at where he came from, In-sung notices a huge whirlpool trying to pull him down. The protagonist cracks a smile, saying he got it right. Something in the water moves, and the protagonist complains that there's too much of it. It was getting too hasty. The young man receives a notification that Instant Beauty has entered room 9, and only 12 more people can go there. In-sung calls for young Gui. Jesus says he got first place again. He asks why he wasn't answering, and In-sung says this is the only answer he can give right now. He goes up to the surface and takes a deep breath. In-sung grabs the door handle, saying it's okay and that he made it this far. Jesus says she thought they were closer since Dungeon 5. The protagonist gets angry and tells her to give him a minute. He thinks there must be another place for him to grab onto. In-sung holds on to both places and tries to pull himself up to push it down. Then he yells to open the door now, but he notices it's not opening no matter if he pulls or pushes. He shouldn't panic because if he falls, he'll land in the water and the door won't open because of the pressure. The door won't open until the place is completely filled with water. He wonders if the water could be in the room beyond the door. He tells little Gui to evolve and fill the place with water, The little turtle launches a water ball onto the floor. In-sung takes a breath underwater and opens the door. The chat comments that it opened and wonders how he knew about the water pressure difference. In-sung enters the small room and follows the detector to the hexagon. Socrates says he won't make any of them doubt him again, and the chat complains that he always doubts every time. The protagonist steps on the hexagon, and the system announces he's the first to enter room 10. He'll be rewarded with an F-rank skill for placing first 7 times, and only 9 more people can enter. However, In-sung is surprised when he sees what's on the other side. He thinks it's the same as room 5, but there's no moon and no longevity symbols. Room 10 was a labyrinth with all sorts of hidden treasures and monsters. He just needed 10 admissions and 10,000 fan votes. The protagonist thinks that a total of 10 people can participate together, and he doesn't know if the next ones will be friends or foes. But he notices the fan voting is starting. Fans who enter the room will have a total of 1 vote per day in room 10, and he's eligible to receive a maximum of 10,000 votes. The young man thinks it's best to get out of there as soon as he can. He has a feeling about it. Besides, the system had offered him the choice of a skill. In-sung could choose one of the skills: healing touch, jump, sacrifice, shield, and dash. He shouts that there's an advanced skill and looks at the description. This skill allowed him to create a shield for all nearby creatures for 5 seconds, but he would die after using it. He falls to the ground, saying it's just a skill that would make him die faster. That's why he'll choose the forward dash, allowing him to instantly move forward within a 5-meter radius. He activates the skill and takes a big leap forward, saying it's really fast. He decides to check the shop as well. Room 10's shop was selling a treasure key and a map for 500 balloons. In-sung decides to buy the map first. He says it was a level above his expectations because it wasn't complicated. There were monsters and treasure keys. He had to find a chest, open it with the key, collect the treasure, and escape. That was the whole process. The small blue ball was his location, so he couldn't get lost. The closest thing to him was the elephant around the middle, and that's what he needed to find. The protagonist goes to the room to find the elephant. He says it's really hot as he looks at the treasure chest. In-sung shouts with happiness and wonders if it's really that easy. But an elephant appears in front of him, and the chat comments that it couldn't be that easy since it's the end of the first dungeon. The 3-trunked elephant appears. In-sung yells that he can't defeat this monster, and Socrates calls him heartless. The elephant charges toward the protagonist and tries to attack him with its trunk. In-sung jumps to the side, dodging the blow. Then he draws his iron spear. The protagonist activates his forward dash and tries to cut the elephant with his spear. The creature is quickly defeated with no difficulty. The spear was dirty, and finally, the elephant falls to the ground. 2 people in the chat vote for the protagonist. In-sung comments that this baby elephant was very weak, but he notices that instead of skin, it has hair. The room's rank is updated, and the protagonist gains an unlimited inventory space. He screams with joy, and his fans say that exploring alone is an insane advantage. The treasure chest contains a necessary item to escape the dungeon. He shouts the key, and realizes it's a bingo since he has the hexagon detector from room 10. In-sung thinks he can escape with this and get first place this way. Suddenly, the Great Spectre's hunting instinct is activated. The elephant's wife was furious about losing her husband, and the protagonist must be wary of its trunks, of which there were 5. In-sung uses his ability to strengthen his focus and equipment, enhancing his physique and muscles with all the skills. The young man realizes he's already found a treasure. He's going to avoid the fight and focus on escaping. But as he grabs the doorknob, the protagonist notices the door isn't opening. The elephant charges toward the protagonist. But In-sung notices he can't climb the stairs. The system announces that he can only leave after taking the life of the elephant that lost its husband. In-sung sighs, saying he's the one who defeated the Great Spectre. Then he runs towards the elephant with his spear. The protagonist says he'll finish it in a single blow. The elephant tries to strike with its feet. In-sung dodges the blow and charges forward, ready to strike the elephant with his spear. His jumping attack works, but the protagonist notices something. The elephant balances on one leg and manages to dodge the attack. In-sung says he doesn't know how an elephant can move so fast. One of the elephant's maces approaches the protagonist's head. He manages to dodge in midair, but In-sung falls, hitting his head on the ground. The young man tries to get up, saying his rib must be broken. The elephant walks forward, staring at its defeated husband's body on the ground. It gets even angrier and rushes towards the protagonist. In-sung tries to run away. The elephant raises its trunk, ready to attack. In-sung uses his forward dash to dodge and try to lose the creature. He slams his back against the stairs where he entered. He sighs, saying he's still alive. But he notices something different and decides to strike the ceiling with his spear. The weapon does no damage, and In-sung complains that it won't break. He reflects that he can't escape without taking the elephant's life. The protagonist gets a notification that General Hubbard has entered room 10, and 8 more people can go there. Hubbard walks through the labyrinth, saying the sunlight warms his heart, and that he should read some poetry today. Heading down the pig's path, he notices there's grass there, and even some small rabbits. However, from another direction, a huge pig runs towards him. Hubbard says it's a wild boar, and since it has horns, he's going to defeat this damn thing, pulling something from his inventory. The shield of Veritas, the goddess of truth from Greek mythology. The boar collides with the shield, forcing Hubbard back. The man says he can't defeat it at his current level. Another boar runs towards the first, and they both charge at the shield. Hubbard cracks a smile as he tries to withstand both boars with his shield. Both are thrown back, and the system notifies that Leo has entered room 10, and 7 more people can go there. The boars fall to the ground, causing an explosion of smoke. Agonizing in pain as Hubbard finishes them off with his shield. The first boar charges at him, but Hubbard strikes it in the belly with his shield, saying this was the real judgment. Another boar tries to attack the general's back, and he reflects that he was being careless, but an arrow hits the boar before it can do any damage. A girl makes noises with her mouth as she puts away her bow. She says her skills are incredible, and no one can defeat her. Hubbard calls out to her, saying she must be his student, Leo. The girl repeats General Hubbard, and he confirms her suspicion. Suddenly, the ground there begins to shake. A box emits a bit of light, revealing a treasure chest. Both Hubbard and Leo are surprised. Back in the fight with the elephant, In-sung has driven his spear into its back. He repeats the process several times, saying he thought it was a weak spot, but in reality, it was useless, and it was too hard to pierce the tough hide. So he decides to aim for the eyes where it's completely vulnerable. The protagonist leaps, holding his spear, and apologizes, but the elephant is going to hell today. He is thrown far away, falling way back due to the elephant's reaction. The chat mocks him, saying there were 4 trunks and he's an idiot. In-sung tries to get up, groaning in pain. Outside, Leo tries to claim the treasure is hers, but Hubbard wants his first. It's a magnifying glass, a prize for the 2 boars. Hubbard wonders where it could be used. Leo runs off, saying she doesn't care and that it's hers. The general tells her to come back, as taking things like that is a crime. He clenches his fist, realizing Leo isn't coming back. Then he says it's good, as he'll project an aura of ethics after all this. Returning to the fight, In-sung dodged a blow from the elephant. He does a few acrobatics to retreat and then runs toward the monster. In-sung says he's found the opening he was looking for. The elephant moves before he can attack and uses its mace-tipped trunk to strike. His chat asks how many times he's been hit, adding that even the mammoth is bored. In-sung thinks this allows him to make a surprise attack and that he can't use multiple forward dashes continuously. But he's figured out the pattern, and the lower area is a weak spot because its movements are faster when he aims there. So he says he's ending this now. The protagonist approaches with long strides and activates his focus strengthening. In-sung dodges the 5th trunk by moving to the side. Then he backs away, saying that was the first trunk. Then the 2nd and 4th trunks advance together. The protagonist plants his feet and says that now the mammoth makes 3 direct attacks. Its next attack is 5 continuous spins, and it's time for an opening. In-sung activates his forward dash to get under the mammoth. He couldn't dodge this last time, so he activates his muscle and equipment strengthening skills. His attack will be an all-powerful diagonal thrust. The blow is so strong it lifts the mammoth. The monster spits and screams. It falls to the ground as the system announces he has defeated the great mammoth and received 1,000 votes as a reward. He received an additional 1,000 votes as a solo bonus, the soul stone of the mutated mammoth, and his physical abilities have improved. The protagonist complains that it's too heavy and that he got pinned when he attacked from under its stomach. In-sung struggles to get out from under it, suffering from the terrible smell. His muscle strengthening activates, but he writhes in pain. In-sung feels the pain in his rib joint. He wonders how this could happen, as he doesn't want to lose his life here yet. But suddenly, a noise is heard. Hubbard appears at the door, saying someone has already finished their mission. The protagonist says he is please save. Hubbard says he arrived at class before the teacher and will reward him with 10 points. But you must know how to take advantage if you can't dodge, and In-sung tells him to stop with the jokes. The general asks how he got covered in mud, as it smells like a toilet, and the protagonist asks for help. Hubbard says he'll listen after he gets out, and In-sung asks if he's able to lift it. The man says it's impossible to know without trying and that it's his school's motto, grabbing the underside of the mammoth and using his strength to lift it. In-sung says he feels it now, and this is its full power. Hubbard tells him to get out immediately, and the protagonist squeezes out from under it. Once out, he thanks the general for his help. Hubbard says it wasn't something he particularly needed. This mammoth's tail will be used for the school fund development, and In-sung notices something different, pointing at the general's hat while mentioning his name, Hubbard. The hat was spelled wrong, and Hubbard asks what's wrong with it. In-sung asks if it shouldn't be Hoovered instead of Hubbard, but it just irritates the general, who tells him to repeat that phrase. The protagonist looks at the general, as Hubbard starts to laugh, saying his student is genuinely amusing and funny. Hubbard was right, his English was very weak, and he even got corrected by his fans. He says there was no reason for his genuine student to be ashamed of his ignorance. He must overcome this obstacle by attending his classes and drawing his shield. In-sung gets excited and tells him to talk about this Veritas. Hubbard runs his hand over it and says it means truth and was his school's mascot. The protagonist says he doesn't care about the meaning and that this is Veritas. His teacher asks what he was trying to say, but In-sung says it was nothing and that they should cross the river first. Hubbard asks if his student wouldn't like to take a bath, because that smell was really strong. In-sung takes off his shirt, saying he forgot and is very sorry. The chat comments that he was doing it without a care and didn't seem embarrassed like last time. In-sung says he's going to pause the live stream and turn the other way since he's going to wash up. He turns toward instructor Hubbard, now shirtless. He freaks out, complaining that his eyes are hurting. He asks where he's going to bathe and says it's too much since he didn't need to be embarrassed as they're the same age. Little Gui creates a ball of water and shoots it toward the protagonist. The young man finishes bathing, and the chat comments that this weirdo was kneeling before an even bigger weirdo. In-sung gets dressed, saying it was refreshing and that he's all clean now. Hubbard says it was amazing and that he'll ask for Lil Gui's services next time. Another person appears at the door. Leo says she was wondering who was there and makes some strange noises with her mouth. Hubbard gently introduces her as his student Leo and says everything is fine. The general asks if the girl has finished her reflection. Leo ignores him and goes to see the turtle, saying she's heard a lot about him. It seemed the bald old man was real too, which surprised In-sung. He says it's good to meet her and introduces himself as Save Me, adding that he used to have some hair. Hubbard says Leo is an honor student who is above the average rank. The girl asks if the general was mad and says it was just a joke, as she'll return the item. Hubbard tells her to keep it because they will be traveling together. Leo repeats this and In-sung questions it. The professor says they will travel to avoid any kind of danger, and this is for the sake of Hubbard's students, and Leo agrees. In-sung thinks that moving as a team would be dangerous anyway, and anyone could escape quickly after getting an item. Leo asks about their next move, and In-sung says it's been a long time since he's heard that. The protagonist asks if they should start looking for the nearest treasure. Another notification says that Doghead has entered room 10 and 6 more people can go there. Hubbard says here comes a new student and that he'll send him an admission message. In-sung asks him to wait a minute and says he'll send it. He thinks he should run from here after receiving an admission notice as a student, and after sending it, he noticed he'd gotten a response. In-sung says he was ignored, and Hubbard tells him to let the guy move alone since everyone works differently. They will go on ahead first. They walk to an area with a cat symbol. In-sung says it's a forest, and there's a dungeon inside a dungeon. Everyone gets into their stances, and Leo says they're going to find the monster. The system notifies them that a mutant tiger has appeared, and it won't let them leave unless they defeat the monster. The tiger lunges from the bushes, and Leo notices the sound. In-sung readies his spear to throw at the creature. He strikes the monster's stomach. Leo uses an imaginary bow to attack. She hits the monster's leg and says it was a great shot. The tiger charges once more. In-sung dodges using strength enhancement. Hubbard grabs the Veritas shield and says that in its name, the creature will suffer a penalty, hitting it with the shield. It lands on the ground, and after crawling for a few seconds, the tiger collapses. Hubbard says this marks the end of today's lesson, and In-sung says everyone worked hard. Doing these things as a team made it much easier, and both of them are very skilled. The system says they took the mutant tiger's life and received 1,000 votes as a reward. In-sung notices it had 6 claws in the front and 4 in the back and wonders if there could be a hidden meaning. Hubbard says it's a long box. Inside is the 1,000-grip arrow, which could be used once to shatter even the moon or the sun. In-sung asks if he's going to hit the sun with it, saying it was too obvious. But he thinks the arrow would be better for Leo since she's an archer, and they will also find the celestial bow soon. The girl says In-sung can speak freely since he's also young, and the protagonist accepts. The system notifies them that Instant Beauty has entered room 10 and only 5 more people can go there, which makes In-sung happy. He asks his colleagues if they mind if he invites her, since she's nice, and they clear room 5 together. Heisu walks through room 10 until she receives a message from In-sung saying she was late and he thought she was dead. The girl replies that she's so stupid for caring about him, leaving the protagonist confused. A few minutes later, and In-sung introduces General Hubbard and Leo. Heisu says it's nice to meet them, and that her name is Instant Beauty. In-sung asks why she said those words and if she doesn't want to join them. Heisu says the dog-faced guy was bothering her, telling her to join him, and the protagonist says there must have been a misunderstanding. The girl gets angry because he said he had many balloons more than she did. Leo says she received a message from that guy earlier, and Hubbard says the same. In-sung thinks they just ignored the message he sent, and wonders if Doghead might be trying to build a team on purpose, excluding the first-place player. Elsewhere, Doghead tells everyone not to worry and to just trust him. He asks if they know how many balloons he has in his possession. He'll let everyone escape normally if they all help him get first place. The butler asks if he's telling them to stand aside after subduing a monster and let him take its life. Doghead confirms and says he'll give them more balloons if they help him that way. The swordsman asks if he has any balloons left, since he's already given away so many. But Doghead tells him not to worry about it, thinking he's secured seas of money that will never run out, because he got the giant coral guild to back him up. Suddenly, the system says the streamer Permanent Abandonment has arrived. The protagonists tell In-sung to contact the people who arrived to have them join their team. Suddenly, a tiger attacks the Veritas shield and In-sung holds it back. Heisu gets annoyed, draws her sword, and tells them to bring the monster to her. The group finishes off the tiger, and In-sung asks if she's going to continue what she was saying before, and Heisu says he was right. One more person had just arrived, and Doghead must have contacted him. A streamer named Reaper Huan arrives, and all 10 slots are filled. Heisu says she'll message him before Doghead does, But the girl notices something different this time. The system announces that a malfunction is occurring and Dungeon 10 will now change, as its existence will collapse from an unknown force. The dungeon escape will switch to safety mode due to the unexpected danger. Insung thinks it must be the goat from before, and Jesus says they were wasting their effort. The system also says that all ranks will be reset and the test will be changed to a racing competition. Doghead yells that this doesn't even make sense and that it ruined his brilliant plan. The system begins to build the track, and the land across the area shifts. A mountain grows thanks to the earth molding. Insung and his group stagger from the changing landscape. A chasm is created nearby. The system says the rules are to run at the same time from the starting line and be the first to arrive to escape. Doghead and his group complain that this is hell and they have to run through there while the place is full of dangers. Insung receives a notice that everyone will be summoned to the starting point. Then, a blue aura envelops everyone there, sending the protagonist and his group to the starting point. Doghead's group appears in the same place. He asks if that's Save Me, saying he can tell just by looking. Insung says he doesn't know who he's supposed to be and thinks that his face really does look like a dog's, saying that he didn't seem to hear. They were in a cosplay group and he could recognize them just by looking. Asura, the Moonlight Swordsman, and the Little Lucky One. Jesus calls for Mr. Reaper Huan to come over. The old man looks both ways and decides to join Doghead's team. The girl says the man was blind to who brought him here and should just stay with those guys now. The system announces that according to each player's map, they will just run along the room. Anyone who fails to escape within 1 hour will lose. The previous ranking will be completely reset, and the former first-place winner will receive a gift. The high jump ability goes to Insung. There were no other rules besides running. The dog warrior says they were told to escape no matter the cost, and it's going to be a huge fight. Nothing mattered except getting first place. Everyone in the other group prepares for the race and nods. A smirk spreads across Doghead's face. The system notifies them that a false start will result in immediate disqualification, and that everyone should line up. The countdown from 3, 2, and 1 begins. Insung activates his ability to strengthen his focus, physique, and enhance his muscles. He prepares to run as the race starts. Doghead makes his move, saying he'll take down Insung first. But the protagonist just dodges his attack. He says they had a reasonable plan, but now he was just asking for a beating. Doghead goes flying from the blow. Insung's group decides they should just run. Jesus jokes that it must have hurt. Doghead regs on the ground, saying it's unbelievable. The group immediately moves on, saying there's no reason to turn this into a team fight. That strange old man says they made a promise. But Asura yells that they'll all be finished if they don't escape this place. Reaper Huan says they shouldn't turn on each other, or the other side will see them as enemies. The Moonlight Swordsman agrees and says he'll go with them. Doghead glares down the race path as he tries to get up. He puts a hand to his face, groaning in pain. He asks if those bastards are really going to join the race without him. He orders the snake on his arm to bite him, and the creature obeys. Insung keeps running, asking what the deal is with that hole in the ground. He has no idea what it's for. A boulder drops onto the protagonist's path. It rolls towards them. Insung yells that the path has a hole because there's a boulder meant to move through it. Hubbard cries out that they can't escape and asks if they're going to die here. Insung notices something and tells everyone to grab onto him. The whole group grabs the protagonist and he activates high jump. He focuses the strength in his feet and leaps. Insung lands on the ground with everyone safe. He says he can use the skill like that. The group celebrates having escaped thanks to him. The Moonlight Swordsman wonders what that was and his group tries to watch. But a rolling boulder falls from the mountain towards the path. It follows the path of the hole, trying to attack that group. The others try to run from the boulder. They notice someone with 4 arms is up ahead. It's a humanoid monster with a snake-like appearance. The girl covers her eyes and realizes it's Doghead. The monster stops in front of the path and grabs the ground with 2 arms. Then he yells, trying to use 3 of them to stop the boulder. The group gasps as the monster is pushed back by the boulder's force. He laughs and lets go of the boulder. The girl screams in fear, begging to be saved as the boulder rolls towards her. Unfortunately, it's the end for the girl. Doghead asks if she really wants help from a guy she just called a monster. He says they need a hierarchy, so they should call him Captain. The Reaper repeats, Captain? Doghead asks if he would help him, but says this is why they need to work hard for him in the future. The group agrees and calls him Captain. Insung runs alongside his friends. Jesus asks if they're all going to end up in a coffin from being crushed and says they should slow down. The protagonist says it's better to keep up the pace as much as possible, and Hubbard agrees. Then they all notice a stone wall blocking their path. The group slows down, but they all back away when the wall shifts. Everyone is surprised, and Insung realizes they are now golems. The golems open their mouths. They roar and unleash a barrage of fire at the protagonists. The protagonist is surprised by the fireballs. Jesus opens her inventory and draws her sword. She charges forward, slicing through the fireballs. She makes several cuts, and the chat is amazed. She relays their instant beauty. Insung punches one of the fireballs, shattering it into pieces. He then swings around with his spear. One of the balls flies off and Liu shoots it with her bow. But all the arrows shatter upon hitting the stone and the girl is shocked. Hubbard blocks the stone with his Veritas shield. The system announces the second round of golems shooting fire stones. Insung and Heisu advance together to attack the stone structures. The protagonist knees the statue and the girl slashes it with her sword. She calls out to everyone, saying now is the time to run. Heisu says getting out wasn't that hard, and Insung adds they're weak compared to the monsters they faced before. Liu notices something different. There are two chimeras in their path. Both of them fly towards the group, roaring. A few minutes later, they were eating rations. Insung says the general still has food left, which gives them a way out. Hubbard adds that they must prepare for the unexpected. Liu asks if Doghead can't catch them anymore. That monster holds two stones in his hands. He throws them, hitting each of the golems in the head. The stones go flying. Insung and Leo keep running while the girl says they should take a break. The protagonist asks if they really should. Heisu tells them to shut up because they need to keep running. Hubbard also looked like he wanted to rest. A few minutes later, the general says they completed about 70%, and the rest of the race shouldn't be too long. Insung drinks his water but notices something is off. Dodhead's group had already reached that monster. Insung says he's a monster and he's going crazy. Heisu replies that she knew it and told them not to rest. The monster says he'll give Instant Beauty a second chance to join his side. Heisu charges with her sword and tells him to know his place. Socrates sends a message saying this is the best thing about human history. Heisu attempts a downward sword strike. The monster just strikes her in the side of her stomach. She feels immense pain and falls back, clutching her stomach. The monster says she'll regret underestimating him. Leo readies her bow and fires an arrow at the monster. But he just catches the arrow and says he already told them he was the winner. He then orders his subordinates to get them. The group advances on the protagonists. Asura holds his sledgehammer and tries to strike Liu. Heisu faces the moonlight swordsman Li Du Ryu. Their swords clash as she thinks about how fast and strong he is. And he's using dual swords, which is really bad for her. It was getting worse with every move. The moonlight swordsman spots an opening and reverses his grip on his katana. He strikes her leg, saying he was waiting for this. He laughs at her pain as Heisu coughs. The swordsman tells her to stay right there. Reaper Huan runs along the ground, laughing with a strange look on his face. He grabs Hubbard's Veritas shield. The general thinks he's preparing to defend against any kind of attack. The Reaper blows a kind of smoke from the back of his throat. Hubbard recognizes the smell, and the chat says it's an illegal chemical breath. Little Lucky grabs the general by the waist. He slams him to the ground with all his strength. The protagonist wonders if everyone has fallen. Doghead runs up behind him, asking if he has time to look away. He sends the protagonist flying with a single blow. The protagonist falls far from the racetrack. Insung screams in fear. The system announces there are only 15 minutes left to escape the dungeon. Insung wakes up and says yes, he understands. He used one of his jumping skills to get back up. The young man lands, and the chat says it was realistic and the new skill came at just the right time. Everyone in his group was defeated on the ground. Insung picks up the turtle and says that young boy has to work hard now. Back with the monsters group, he says he feels refreshed after cleaning up that mess. Then he notices a water ball hitting another spot, which is a hot springs area. Insung runs through there, digging his fingers in. The monster looks to the side and runs away as a blast of water floods the area. Reaper falls to the ground, landing hard on his back. Asura and the local swordsman are thrown back. The butler uses the card as a ladder while the swordsman slides down using his hat. They both slide down and finally land on the ground side by side. The monster runs and a lucky little guy gets hit by the water. He cries out for help, but the dog-headed man steps on his stomach, using him as a springboard to get to the other side. The lucky little guy calls the monster a bastard. The monster says he's useless and can't survive on his own. The protagonist's entire group is resting. Heisu says she has recovered thanks to Little Boy's help. Hubbard says they didn't listen to his student Instant Beauty's warning and made a huge mistake this time. The girl says they've wasted too much time, and Leo adds that the others must have already reached the finish line. The system announces there are only 10 minutes left. Heisu doubts they can escape in that little time, but Insung shouts for them to push on to their destination. He doesn't know what kind of trap they're caught in, but it was too early to lose hope. The monsters group finds the hexagon. He runs forward, yelling that he'll get first place and that everyone did a good job. The lunar swordsman calls him a dirty bastard for taking his comrades' lives, and Asura calls him trash. Doghead looks back in surprise. He sees Insung's group advancing, using the water as propulsion. Little Gui continues to control the whole situation with the energy from his horns. Insung warns that they are about to land. They all stop right in front of the enemy group. The monster says this is impossible, his voice turning cold. Leo explains that Little Wee controls the hot spring water and that he never expected the water attribute to be so powerful. That monster calls him ridiculous. Only 5 minutes remain to escape room 10. The swordsman says there's no room for more people and tells Ashura to keep her guard up. Hubbard calls them delinquents who don't have the money to shop at a bookstore, just a bunch of idiots. He flexes his bicep against the shield, launching the shield far away. The swordsman brings his swords together and prepares a spinning upper slash attack. Heisu says there's no more reason to be careless. She manages to cut the swordsman with ease. Li Jiryu calls for his sword as he falls. The monster says it doesn't matter how much he wants to defeat him. It's useless unless he's willing to risk it all. In-sung uses focus, strength, and muscle enhancement to attack. The monster is hit in the stomach and something starts to dissolve. Suddenly, he reverts to his human form and falls to the ground. In-sung says it's all over. Only 3 minutes were left and Doghead asks the snake to do it. He says it will be hard on her body, but it's better than losing. But the snake is hit in the head by an arrow. Leo says she hates snakes, and Doghead gets up, saying this is bad. In-sung charges forward with a punch, and the delinquent tries to tell him to wait. The protagonist hits him and tells him to shut up. Doghead falls off the path. In-sung watches this with Jesus. Hubbard says there's no mercy for these idiots, and Leo agrees they are wise words. The protagonist says they should go now, and the system announces there are only 3 minutes to escape room 10. The hexagon activates, and the system announces they have escaped room 10. It had an important announcement before they head to the hall. Mr. Save Me was in first place in the vote but suffered a defeat, so he was chosen to receive a reward for the successful escape, either unlimited space or high jump. In-sung says that between the two, he doesn't even need to think about it, choosing the jump. Then everyone is teleported to some kind of place, and the protagonist gets a headache. They wonder if this is the hall, as it looks like an entire city. In-sung was trying to remember the last time he saw something like this, but he wants to know what he's riding in, which seems to be some kind of cage. They are being carried by eagles to some location. In-sung looks to the side and wonders if those people are from Hwanchong TV or Styx. The eagle suddenly drops the protagonist's cage. In-sung complains about it just letting him go like that. He collides with other cages and falls to the ground. The protagonist's cage hits something and a piece of it breaks off. Socrates sends 500 balloons, saying this is just the beginning. In-sung gets out of the cage, saying there's nothing good about this. He seemed to be outside the city for now. Then he notices something on his back, seeing some potions and other items falling to the ground. He wonders where these things came from, as he had noticed he was over the weight limit. 2 men run toward him. The protagonist is confused as they say he's filthy and that they want to find something expensive there. In-sung kicks one of them, telling him to get away from his stuff. The blonde guy asks if this bastard wants to keep his items. The protagonist readies his fist, using his strength and muscle enhancement skill. He lands a blow on the giant's head. The blonde guy thinks this is no ordinary guy. Then he whistles, and from a distance, someone uses a knife to cut a rope. A cage falls from a crane, heading straight for the protagonist's head. Then a rope grabs his foot and the protagonist falls. In-sung is pulled away with the cage. He trembles with fear, but the rope is released. A woman says he should be more careful if he has a lot of items, because humans like them survive by stealing from others. The blonde guy charges toward Linny, but In-sung lands a punch on his face before he can do anything, using his frontal dash to chase after the blonde, then using his high jump skill to get on top of the crane. Coming face to face with one of the blonde's allies, the man says this is impossible and readies his knife, but the protagonist kicks him, throwing him off the crane. In-sung says he was in the way, and Linny watches from a distance in silence. After all that, the young man introduces himself to her and thanks her for the help. Linny says she knows, and In-sung asks if she's a fan of his. The girl wearing a hood introduces herself, and the chat is surprised by her beauty. The protagonist gets excited and says it's nice to meet her, but Linny says it's over and should grab his things and follow her. In-sung doesn't understand anything, but they head to a building. They both wait in an elevator, and Linny tells him to stop the stream, because she can't share any information if he doesn't turn it off. The stream is stopped, and they all go to a place belonging to the king of the underworld. In-sung says he can smell many different kinds of food and is going to go crazy. Linny gets his attention and tells him to order whatever he wants since she's buying. The protagonist orders many expensive things, but the girl says he'll be the one paying if he doesn't finish it all. Their butler says he'll prepare the order, and In-sung tells him to hurry up because he's starving. Linny tells him to be polite. The protagonist questions why she's speaking so casually. Linny says he can speak casually too if he wants to, because she's in charge of the clan's escort, and will ask directly if he hates dealing with this, questioning if he's really willing to sacrifice his life for the clan. The protagonist asks about that, and the girl says he shouldn't think about joining if he doesn't want to deal with it. The question was whether he wants to give his life for the clan, because Coral wants subordinates, the White Lotus seeks brothers, and these are the 3 philosophies of the major factions mentioned before. In-sung tells her to first explain what kind of affection she has for her clan, and who would join if she recruits people like that. Linny says they'll pretend this never happened. In-sung wonders if she's giving up so quickly. She seemed like a tough person. The food arrives, and the girl says she'll just have rice since that's all she can eat. The protagonist asks if he can ask something. He wants to know what the herbs are for, and Linny says he's asking very quickly. But the second dungeon was a place where the championship was held, and this place was a waiting room. However, In-sung just ignores her to eat. Linny explains that first place gets a Class A Awakening Stone, second place gets a Class B, and third place gets a Class C. The guild also receives a reward if the individual wins with its help. In-sung wonders if he can win on his own. She explains that the winner gets both an individual and a guild prize. The protagonist decides he'll participate independently. He tells her to pay the bill after he ate everything and asks if he can have more. Outside, In-sung mentions how much he ate. Linny tells him he won't win if he goes solo. In-sung asks how she can be so sure. The girl explains that they had herbs and repeaters. They'll have the upper hand because they have more experience points and items. A thug on the street spots them. He says it doesn't matter what kind of idiot In-sung is, he needs to come over. Linny recognizes them as the guys who tried to rob him earlier. The man calls for his subordinates and tells them to get to work. The girl says they should get out of there, as she's tired of dealing with these guys. While the other thieves ask if they're going somewhere, Linny just pulls the protagonist into the hotel. The delinquent leader is surprised and asks if he's not coming back out. In-sung asks if they won't come inside, and Linny explains that they are residents. They're just regular people from the underworld who come here to work. Normally, they can't come in since they have their own designated work area, but there's no guarantee since there are exceptions and they are thieves. She calls for Mr. Young-hoon and asks for a room. The protagonist should stay here for a while as this is the safest place. She hands him the key to room 707 and In-sung looks at it closely. He asks why she's being so kind to him. Linny says she'll help him individually if he doesn't want to join the guild. She will provide a higher level of information than the guild and make him the champion, because her knowledge is beyond imagination. In-sung asks her to tell him what she wants from him. Linny says she just wants to share the guild prize if he wins. The protagonist thinks for a moment. He asks why she chose him over all the other repeaters, especially since he's an independent streamer. He asks about other newcomers, and Linny says he's special. She'll contact him later, so he should get some rest. In-sung thinks it's not easy to believe all this, but for now, he'll just rest. In another part of the city, Leo runs through the alleys. Axes are thrown at the girl, but she manages to dodge by crouching. The girl aims her bow, saying he won't escape. She hits the men's shields with her arrows. One of them is hit in the head and begins to fade away like a ghost, saying it was a shame he'd been wandering for so long. Leo asks what the hell that was. The bandit says his soul leaves the underworld once its body is destroyed, and judging by her expression, she is number 5248. The girl tells the two of them to get lost and reaches for another arrow. However, they all notice she has no more arrows left to shoot. The girl tells them to wait and says she'll contact a real man. But she breaks into a cold sweat when she notices In-sung's stream is now paused. The bandits ask if she's already getting her memories back and mention that the items are expensive, but something tells them to stop right there. A voice from the sky tells them to return to their ark. Gangren lands on the ground holding his sword, making all the bandits fall back. He sighs and says he expected these guys to be here instead of working. Both of them stand up, calling for the operator. Then they start running in the opposite direction from him. The operator cracks a smile. He releases his energy and finally charges at the two to attack. He grabs them both at once, smashing them into each other. He states each of their names and districts, as they left their work area without permission and committed illegal acts against participants. Both of them will return to the underworld for breach of contract. The ghosts of both bandits begin to fly upwards from there. The operator says they'll rot in the prison camp, and Leo thinks it's cool. She asks if he's also a participant in the dungeon escape. The operator recognizes her as the child who showed some talent. Leo says she's not a child, and the operator tells her he's been watching her. She should take care of herself, since the king of hell is interested in her. And just like that, he disappears from the scene without any further explanation. Elsewhere, In-sung tries to sell the purple amethyst, asking if there are any bids for it. The vendor says it's possible, and it won't take long. The total comes to 5 silver pieces, and the protagonist thinks that's very expensive. In the hall's shop, 1 copper sold for 10 balloons, 1 silver for 100, and 1 gold for 1,000. The blacksmith asks if he doesn't want it and tells him to leave if he's not buying anything. He walks away with a shiny necklace. In-sung had bought expensive clothes with silver and gold. He spent quite a bit of money and now looks at himself in the mirror, but he trembles with sadness, saying that he's wearing new clothes. Even this barren land was growing, but the hair on his head wasn't, and he shouldn't have thought about this before. He goes to a different store where they were selling the honey of life. The vendor says that few people buy these things nowadays, and he finally found the growth stimulant. In-sung says he came here hoping for some luck but found a real one, also walking through another district. In room 3, the protagonist goes down the stairs. He remembers Linny explaining the reason why newbies always lag behind repeaters, and it wasn't strength or items, but something even more important, preparation. That was the place where he could mix various types of different herbs. In-sung announces he's entering, and the man asks if he's there for medicine. He should come back tomorrow, as he's busy for today. He has a blindfold over his eyes and a gramophone playing music for him. In-sung says it would be a waste of time to come back tomorrow and asks if it can't be done today. Sweating with anger, he says he'll look somewhere else, and wonders where else he could find someone, as he didn't think anyone could process the herb of immortality. The man immediately comes out after hearing those words, saying he should have mentioned earlier that he has the herb of immortality. He never thought it possible for someone like him to have such a rare herb. In-sung asks if he can make good medicine with it, and the alchemist asks what he wants him to do. The herb of immortality possessed a lot of yin energy. It could be transformed into great power if refined properly, and it was like a ginseng grove in darkness. The protagonist asks if it's something between aura or kai, but the alchemist says it will be expensive and he can try later for the price of 10 gold. Insung says 10 gold is worth 10,000 balloons and he only has one left, but the chat reveals it's a lie. The alchemist says it would be a waste since he felt so much passion, and Insung offers another way to pay. The old man says he loves money more than anything. Insung sighs and says he'll win the tournament and bring something of value to the alchemist, who is incredulous at his audacity. Suddenly, the small turtle comes out of the protagonist's suit. The alchemist calls out to the black turtle. Insung asks if he knows it, and the alchemist thinks that a legendary immortal beast is with this guy. Then he tells him to remember his promise to bring something of greater value. He'll have it finished before he returns at the same time tomorrow. Back at the protagonist's building, he opens the box with the growth accelerator and the honey of life. He takes some in his hands, thinking that the honey promotes growth. It's the same principle as the bamboo. He begs for his hair to grow, but there are no results even after several minutes, so he wonders if he should apply more. The protagonist yells in anger, saying the honey of life is an excellent growth stimulant, since it made the bamboo grow 10 meters. Insung lies on the bed, thinking it's time to say goodbye to his hair forever. Suddenly, a notification arrives from Heisu asking where he was. Insung says he's lying down, and the girl asks if he received an offer to join a guild. The protagonist says he doesn't know and just wants to get out of there while she asks what happened. Insung complains that he lost his hair and shoves his head under the pillow. A message arrives from the hall administrator announcing the module for the next tournament, which will be in 14 days. Back at the alchemy workshop, the old man is excited as he refines the herb. He says this water from the underworld should be enough. It's been a few years since such a rare medicine came his way. The main task was to absorb the tremendous vitality while discarding other properties. That was why it had to be in the underworld's water to absorb all its vitality. Now, all he needed to do was mix it with the honey of life. That same morning, Insum entered, asking if anyone was home. He called out to the old geezer sleeping in his bed. The old man woke up and said he was dying, but it had been fun. Insung asked about the medicine, and he pointed to the side. The protagonist questioned if it was that pile of rocks. Opening it, he saw it was a useless thing that permanently increased life, but the body might not handle it if it was weak. The chat asked if it was world tree dung and if the secret ingredient was the herb of immortality. Insung questioned if he should eat this, and the old man asked what the most important thing in a dungeon was. The protagonist replied that it was strength. Then the old man questioned what made someone strong. Strength was different for each person, and working out a lot doesn't mean someone will build muscles like Arnold. This thing allows him to go beyond his limits and will directly change his potential. Great things will happen after he consumes this thing full of vitality. Insung said he might not be able to stand if his body was weak. Pointing to his necklace, he said it was all right. Insung drank the dung, and his chat said their goodbyes. The protagonist felt something different and threw the bowl on the floor. He collapsed, feeling his body burning. The alchemist threw him the honey of life to drink. Insung said he'd eat it next time, but he felt immense pain in his chest, falling to the ground as his iron will activated. The next day, Leo ran towards the general. She said it was great to see him and that she couldn't go to the store because there were too many delinquents. She was satisfied now to have a manager like him, but she couldn't contact her true student. Hubbard asked if it had been 4 days. Heisu mentioned she heard of cases where people died in the hall and went directly to the underworld, and Leo said that wasn't good. Insung suddenly woke up, groaning in pain. The alchemist said he was finally awake, and the protagonist asked if he had died. The old man told him that if he had died and gone to the underworld, he wouldn't be in such a comical state. The protagonist repeated this and stood up. He was surprised to look in the mirror and see hair. The dungeon championship in District 5248, Area 1 was taking place. Several participants walked together down a narrow hallway. The championship included streamers from 4 platforms: Heavenly Gate, Styx, Jordan, and Sanzu, who had escaped from Room 1 and were there to show their talents and skills. The groups participating in the championship were chosen by a lottery, and 35 streamers gathered there, unfairly divided. Leo commented that they were the last number, and Hubbard said it showed the task difficulty was high. Heisu said that Mr. Save must really be dead, but Leo said there was no way the strongest man among them could die. She wanted to know why he hadn't come, saying they would wait because he would definitely show up. Another group asked why there were only 3 of them, and they weren't even repeaters. A man commented that they were just amateurs trying their luck. No one would be left standing. They asked if the others had heard about the first guy to clear all the difficult stages after the 5th. 10 minutes remained for registration, and Linny thought that Save Me seemed to have given up. The system announced that the drawn groups would present shortly, and everyone was asked to take their places just as Insung opened the door. Everyone was surprised to see him, and Leo turned her face. His friends went to meet him, saying he even had hair now. Leo asked if he wasn't bald from the start and if this was his real hair. She pulled on his hair for being so wild. Heisu said that he came, and Insung commented he was busy preparing something. But the girl asked why his eyes were red. Insung wondered about it, and the system told everyone to sit down. Hubbard complained about him being late, and Insung said he knew. The protagonist should register quickly if he hadn't finished. Heisu told him to do it immediately, and Leo said they already did it for him. The protagonist finished his registration, and the system announced that he was a participant from District 5248, and that it was starting. He reflected that he knew nothing since he fell asleep after taking the medicine, and everything was crazy after he woke up. Heisu asked why he was making an expression like he didn't know anything. The protagonist said that was really the case, and she wanted to know if the guild hadn't told him anything, because she had joined the Coral Guild, and the chat confirmed the information. Insung said he'd been seeing a coffin the whole time since he got there. Heisu thought that he really did just sleep and hadn't prepared anything. The protagonist suggested that the championship is divided into preliminaries and finals, with finding items being the main objective. He asked if she could share the information the guild gave her, but Heisu told him to share his plan first. The system announced that the nominated representatives should come to the podium, and the streamer Salary from Jordan TV should come up. Salary was hooded and looked like he had a dog's head. He walked up and pulled a ball from inside. He announced that ball 6 had been drawn, and Save Me Please from Sanzu TV should come up. Insung walked up the stairs, bumping his shoulder against Salary's, but he noticed something strange and turned around, thinking that guy. It was Doghead, who took off his hood and smiled at him. The protagonist's entire group was surprised by this. Insung said this feeling was strange. The system told the streamer to proceed with the draw. A man sighed, watching all this from afar. He commented that it was definitely Doghead and wanted to know how he switched platforms and became number 1. Evil sent a message to Heisu telling her to be careful because he was Doghead. The girl thought he was right and replied that she knew. He watched from a distance, thinking he wanted to recruit him, but he must not be entirely sane. Ball 3 was drawn from the bowl. The system announced that the streamer Alpha and Omega from Heavenly Gate should come to the podium. Back in his seat, Heisu asked if that was Doghead, and the protagonist said it seemed to be. Hubbard questioned how he got there, and Leo said it made no sense to change platforms and names. Everyone wondered if he wanted to get revenge on them. She felt bad about it, and the guild had messaged Heisu to be careful. Doghead looked back, seeing the group. Then he made a Korean heart symbol, welcoming the summoner. Insung felt a strange sensation in his chest because of it. He wondered about the summoner, and if it could be that goat, because those eyes definitely didn't belong to Doghead. Heisu said her group's draw was over, showing she was with 2 other people from Heavenly Gate TV. She asked if Mr. Save Me belonged to Group 3. Insung confirmed and said he was thinking about something else now. He checked if the draw for his group was over, but there was still 1 person left. Leah went to the stage to draw her ball, shouting that she was in Group 3. And she announced she was with Insung. Heisu said everyone was on their own and there was no chance of being betrayed. Leo asked if that was right, and Insung confirmed. But she told him to move his hand like this, getting angry. The protagonist asked why he had to raise the back of his hand. She slapped his palm, saying this was the Indian way of complimenting others. Another group's draw finished, and the preliminaries were about to begin. Every group would enter the same dungeon together, but only the top 2 would advance. All participants must step onto the hexagon with their respective groups. The protagonist noticed something as Salary's group walked by. Insung said he was arrogant, and with that the preliminaries began. The group fell into a strange dungeon. Liu drew her arrow, and the protagonist looked back. He thought the ceiling was so high he couldn't even see the top. Besides that, there was only 1 tunnel and 4 doors. At the end of the tunnel was the hexagon with a lever. Liu asked the gentleman to go to it, because each door had a different key. Insung tried to unlock it, but said it was locked. Leo whispered that this test might be about escaping after finding the key, and Insung questioned her about it. But one of the group members started digging into the ground rapidly. He thinks the guild told him to dig for the key, and that monsters would show up after a while. Leo says she can see the key, but Insung suggests they assess the situation first. A nun kneels on the ground, asking her god for wisdom. Then a wicked smile spreads across her face as her staff begins to glow. 3 minutes had passed since they entered, and a lever was rising which would summon black spiders. The lever rises a bit more, and a swarm of arachnids appears, charging toward Group 3. The nun murmurs something and moves her staff. She says she will grant them light, and then takes the lives of the insects. Insung thinks she must be a repeater, and this seems to be the power of awakening. The old man had told him he wouldn't understand it yet, but he was using his life force, and that's called awakening. He can only stick to his usual moves as the spiders charge. Insung pulls something from his inventory, thinking, I have no choice now. His monster bone spear was extremely expensive and powerful. Physical and weapon enhancement along with muscle improvement are activated. Insung easily slices through all the spiders. Leo says he's really strong and asks what just happened. Insung thinks his power has definitely doubled, and it must be from the immortal herb. The man who was digging is still there. Insung suggests they fight together, but the man says this isn't it. The spiders lay defeated on the ground. The protagonist says more keep appearing, and Leo suggests they get their keys. That man finally spots a chest and says this is what he wanted, but he opens it only to come face to face with a snake. The monster strikes his neck with a bite, making the K-pop loving streamer lose his life and be eliminated. Leo calls him a fraud, and Insung remarks that the first competitor has been eliminated. The spiders kept coming as long as the lever was up, and they wonder if they should turn it off. There were too many monsters for them to handle. The nun says she will be the one to dig while the others fend off the monsters. Insung asks if she couldn't block them while one person searches for the keys, but she replies that she will be the one looking for the key. and starts digging. In-sung and Leo yell that there's no such rule and they should decide with rock, paper, scissors. The nun says she is blessed by God and would never play such a game. But all three decide to play, and after a while, she's using the light from her staff, struggling to defend against the spiders. In-sung tells Young-Wei to look around, since he has a good sense of smell. He sniffs a spot and alerts the protagonist to its location. In-sung digs there and says this must be it, pulling out a chest. However, inside was only a shadow orb fragment. The protagonist complains that it's still not a key. The turtle points to another spot, and the protagonist digs, finding several chests along the way. The lever rises a little more, and the spiders keep advancing. The nun and Leo manage to handle them using their classes and skills. Leo warns the man that the spiders keep growing, and she thinks it has something to do with the lever. In-sung tells her to wait just a little longer as he's still looking. He reflects that walking over there is just asking to get killed, and he can't fly to pull the lever. Suddenly, the protagonist has an idea about flying. He says it's time to use the item he bought at the market. Then he hands it to Little Gui, saying it's time. It was an advanced stone evolution crystal. Little Gui, it evolves to the advanced level, and the stone will be consumed by this evolution. The nun tells him to do something because she's about to die from the difficulty. In-sung tells her to hang on a little longer and asks Liu to come back for a second, because Little Gui will help her in the meantime, turning into a cute little earth turtle. He uses his skill to fortify the earth and create a shield from the surrounding soil. The spiders fall to the ground thanks to the stone spikes. The nun shouts that the turtle is really skilled. Leo asks if he wants her to find the key with him, but the protagonist says no, tying her with a rope. Leo opens her mouth and screams for him to stop as In-sung ties her to the spear, saying he can do this. He gets ready and throws it towards the lever. Leo screams in fear, but the tip of the spear hits the wall. She falls to the ground but then pulls the lever down. The nun shouts that she did it, and the system announces that the spiders will disappear. They praise each other, amazed that he actually came up with that plan. But the nun remembers the competition and runs towards the digging spot, saying they don't have time and she needs to get the keys. In-sung says he was betrayed instantly, but someone taps him on the back. Leo punches him, asking how he could do that to her. She asks if he's gone crazy, but In-sung apologizes, saying it was an urgent situation. Besides, it actually worked in the end, but Leo tells him not to talk to her. The nun can't find the key in the chests, and the protagonist suggests they hurry up. Leo shows him 2 keys. She says they fell from above when she pulled the lever, and that they should leave quickly because she doesn't want to fight the nun. In-sung understands. He turns the key and a hexagon teleports them away. The nun screams that she's finally found the key. She opens the box, but her expression changes instantly. Some kind of demon pulls her inside the box. Leo wonders what the hell that was. In-sung gets a notification that he's entering the waiting room for the championship finals, and the chat says he only made it because of Leo. The girl is teleported in the same way and advances to the finals. She falls to the ground in fear. In-sung asks what happened, and the girl asks if he didn't see it, because a demon came out when the nun opened the box. The protagonist repeats what she said. In the group's 7 preliminaries, Heizu activates her Iron Fist skill to strike a wall, shattering it to pieces and yelling that she's finally found it. But someone appears behind her and tells her to get out of there, saying this is her property while trying to hit her with a hammer. Heizu easily dodges the blow. As the key flies into the air, the woman shouts that the warrior girl is the winner. Heizu kicks her before she can grab the key. She holds it in her hands, repeating that instant beauty is the true winner. Heizu turns the key and the warrior tells her to wait. But the girl says she should look carefully behind her because there's a gray brick, and if she breaks it, a key will come out. The warrior then turns around, saying it had better not be a lie. Another man strikes the gray brick, saying this is it. He pulls out a chest, saying it really was there, but the warrior tries to claim it's hers. But upon opening the chest, a demon appears. Everyone gets scared, and Heizu tries to turn the key in the door. She advances to the finals and appears in the Zone 1 room, saying that the box that contains a key. In-sung asks if she's saying she saw a goat with horns. Heizu repeats it, and the protagonist greets her. Leo says that just as she was about to leave, the nun opened the box and something like a goat demon came out. Heizu says she saw it too. Elsewhere, at King Yamra's palace, he complains that this goat is crossing the line more and more, and if it got in his way, it would be finished by now, as he bites into a piece of peach. Gangrim says he was investigating on his own, but they couldn't get any information from the Jordan Riverside, and Yamra replies that they must be ashamed. The operator asks what they should do, as it seems there will be multiple victims, and wonders what on earth Baphomet is planning. Yamra looks up, saying he is recruiting new pawns who are not affiliated with heaven or the underworld. He bites another piece of the peach while calling his subordinate, telling him to go and capture that bastard now. In the finals room, the system announces that the participants who advance will receive 1,000 balloons. The finals will begin after all the preliminaries are over. In-sung notes that the reward is balloons, which aren't very useful here. Heizu mentions a rumor that they'll need a lot of them in the next zone. In-sung asks where she got that information, and Heizu says someone in her guild told her. He reflects that maybe he should join a guild soon. Something is heard from a distance. The group says that General Hubbard made it through as expected. Hubbard confirms it, but he saw something horrible and now feels sick. The protagonist asks if he saw the goat too, and Hubbard wonders if they all did. Suddenly, a notification appeared stating the finalists had been determined. There were only 8 finalists in total, and Jesus says it was fewer than expected. Hubbard figures it must be because of the goat, and Liu says everyone on Jordan's side was eliminated. The system announces they're moving to the final arena and everyone must go to the hexagon. Most of them decide to drink a recovery potion. Above the portal, an aura envelops all 8 of them. In-sung appears in a desert area and wonders what this is and where he's supposed to be. Linny sends a message asking where he is. The protagonist asks her to tell him where he should be, thinking it was the perfect time for her to message him. The girl tells him to decide between joining the guild or forming a team with her. If he joins the guild, she'll release information from them. But if he teams up with her, she'll tell him everything she knows. The protagonist thinks he'll join the guild later and decides to team up with her for now. Linny tells him to look for the black orb fragments because he can create a large orb by combining 10 of them. He already has 4. The girl explains that he just needs to steal from other streamers and get items from monsters. First, he should open the map and look around. The protagonist walks until he comes across a skeleton. He walks around and suddenly the Great Spectre's hunting instincts activate. He notices the nun praying, thinking that the Great Spectre's instinct doesn't react to humans, but this was the same one he lost to before. In-sung shouts that she's alive, but the nun screams and emanates a frightening energy. She moves her staff toward the protagonist while he questions why she's doing this and if she doesn't recognize him. But a foot strikes the nun in the face. The reincarnated Baphomet kicks her away. In-sung wonders about this, and Baphomet tells his summoner to come with him. The protagonist retorts that he's not Doghead and demands to know what he is and why he keeps showing up. Baphomet speaks a few words the protagonist doesn't understand. He asks Socrates to translate it. It's a greetings to the mighty morning and introduces himself as Baphomet. The protagonist repeats the name. He thinks that he sounds like the one his fan mentioned was defeated, which means he's very dangerous. But a light suddenly envelops the sky. It crashes to the ground, causing a huge explosion that forces In-sung back. The operator appears in front of him, and the protagonist wonders what this is now. Gangrim says that the little rat was hiding there, and Baphomet says it's been a while since he's seen him. In-sung reflects that, based on his chat's reactions, this guy must be someone important. The operator draws his sword, saying the goat must come with him. Baphomet replies that he's a mountain goat and removes his hood. Both engage in a physical clash right after, causing an explosion that makes In-sung retreat again. The emissary and Baphomet continue to trade blows. In-sung questions what this is and why the scale of this battle is so insane. Baphomet launches an aerial attack and Gangrim manages to dodge. In-sung focuses strength in his legs and activates his jump to get away, landing at a safe distance from the clash. In-sung says he doesn't need to get involved in a fight between these guys. He remembers Linny told him to find the black orb fragments and that he already has 4. That should be good enough, and these guys are really scary. The protagonist places the evolution stone on the ground. The little turtle transforms into its stone evolution, and the system sends a notification. They keep running. In-sung says it's in the 3 o'clock direction. Suddenly, he runs into a guy with a chainsaw on his back who says they've finally met. Another person in armadillo armor says that if In-sung has any fragments, he should hand them over. The protagonist just smirks. He beats them up while the men say they'll give them to him, mentioning they have 5 fragments combined. In-sung thanks them, saying he only needed 1 more to go. He stops to think that Linny had said he could find them on monsters too. He leaps from a high place and finds some strange creatures with big mouths. In-sung runs from them with a smile on his face, but he turns back and strikes one of them with his spear. The monster roars and after a few seconds, falls to the ground. 2 fragments emerge from its body. The protagonist says he has 11 fragments now, which is more than he needed. He accepts the system notification that asks if he'd like to combine them into a single orb. His fragments fly out of his hand. The protagonist says it's showing him the way he needs to go, so he follows the orb running. Linny warns him that a guardian spider is guarding the temple entrance and says she'll tell him its weakness, so he should deal with it in a single blow. In-sung runs up the temple stairs and comes face to face with the spider the girl warned him about. The monster spits a type of venom at him. Little Goy uses its horn abilities to create a stone wall that blocks the attack. In-sung leaps, saying the spider probably didn't expect that. After getting on its back, Linny sends a message saying there's a black lens on the 3rd right leg that connects to the thoracic vertebra. In-sung spots it and pierces it with his spear. The spider definitely felt the attack. It shatters into a million pieces. The protagonist absorbs the spider's soul essence and obtains its soul stone. He walks to the temple's throne. Linny says he'll see the stone altar, but there's nothing there. There should be a different colored brick about 5 meters from the 8th pillar next to the altar. In-sung finds it and strikes it. The girl says there's a wild ginseng inside, and if he can get it, he'll win. In-sung asks why it won't come out as he tries to pull it. He activates his physical and muscle enhancement skill, finally managing to pull the ginseng out. The system notifies that the winner has emerged, and Hubbard is surprised to hear about it. And the winner was the streamer Please Save Me, leaving Leo in disbelief. Jesus defeats another person, and the system announces that the first area's championship has ended. In-sung falls to the ground, saying he really did it. Someone approaches him, and the young man says he doesn't know who he is, but it's already over. Gangrym, with his eyes glowing, asks how he could go all out on his account. The protagonist is surprised to see who it is. In-sung asks about the warrior from before, but Baphomet smiles and speaks in his demonic tongue. The protagonist asks what he's saying, and his chat wonders if anyone is good with demonic language. Baphomet repeats it, and Socrates translates it as a question about them joining forces. The protagonist questions this, and the chat says they must have switched bodies. In-sung wonders why he's approaching him like this, and if he's after his body or something. But the hexagon activates, and now the protagonist can return to the waiting room. He uses his forward dash, thinking nothing good will come from getting involved. Baphomet speaks another phrase in his demonic tongue. The system announces that In-sung cannot return to the arena because an unidentified item was removed. In-sung mentally begs him to stop following him, thinking he shouldn't have gone there in the first place. Leo says he got first place again, and Hubbard congratulates him for it. The system announces that the awards ceremony is about to begin. Leo asks why there are so few people there. In-sung replies that they're watching online, and Jesus adds that some guild members are on the second floor. Lenny watches from a distance, thinking that, as expected, he did it again. Evil approaches and says it's been a long time since he's seen the redhead. Lenny says he seems to be doing well, and Evil says he has no time for small talk and has never seen such poor management before. The system announces that Mr. Please Save Me will receive an A-rank Awakening Stone. Evil asks if the Blood Clan has already recruited this guy. Lenny says that even so he wouldn't go to Sanho, thinking that she'll see how long he can maintain this relaxed attitude. Additionally, In-sung receives a prize for the mysterious ginseng for winning independently. He wonders why they took it earlier if they're just going to give it back now, thinking you should give it to Lenny anyway. Evil says that winning independently really shows he's something special, but someone must have helped this man. In second place, Instant Beauty receives a B-rank Awakening Stone. Lenny steps away from him, thinking he's really quick with his guesses. In-sung reflects that he's just gotten his fourth skill, Spider Poison Resistance. He was basically superhuman now. Anyway, an A-rank stone had a 100% chance of granting a heroic class. This was definitely a worthy victory, while the chat urged him to awaken. Using the Awakening Stone, the system warns that the result is influenced by his past life's job, special skills, and hobbies. He absorbs the stone and gains the Penetrating Observer class heroic level. He's told to check the Awaken tab because he's gained the Understanding skill. This skill allows him to gain an understanding of his targets, and it was a unique ability. The protagonist wonders if it's any good since he's not sure yet. His chat says the combination is decent and has good potential, while they ask what he did before. In-sung says he already mentioned he was a chicken appraiser. Lenny calls out for Mr. Please Save Me. In-sung greets her, thinking she came for her prize, and wonders if he should give it to her now. He approaches her, but someone calls out to the protagonist. Gangrym says they're going to go together for a minute. In-sung says he came all this way and tells him to get lost, but they're teleported away, and the live stream ends. In King Yammer's castle, Gangrym places him in the royal chamber. In-sung asks what's wrong with him, but the operator tells him to watch his mouth, that he should be careful where he is. The protagonist thinks the emissary is back. A loud voice says it's good to see the protagonist. In-sung turns, wanting to know who spoke. He thinks that Yammer is tall, maybe about 5 meters high. Yammer asks if he's curious about who he is, and that he is the king of the underworld, surprising In-sung. Yammer tells Gangrym he may leave and congratulates him on a job well done. The commissioner walks away, thinking that his fate and the summoners are intertwined. Yammer says it's good to meet In-sung. The protagonist thinks this guy must be some kind of god, but the king of the underworld tells him to sit, as it would be more comfortable. He asks him not to be nervous in his presence, because he must be curious about why he's here, and what this whole dungeon thing means to him. In-sung says he has a general idea. Yammer laughs, saying that, as expected, he's sharp and is his rising star. But it's no different from the world he lived in. They need politics here too, since everything runs according to laws and rules, and that's why they need entertainment as well. In all this time, no one has been able to escape from here, and In-sung questions this, wondering why he's there. Yammer says the dungeon definitely has an escape route. In-sung asks if he'll return to his world if he escapes the dungeon. Yammer says that if he wants, he could even become a god. In-sung thinks the scale of this is beyond his imagination. The king of hell tells him he wasn't summoned for no reason, because he must go and have a refreshing time. The protagonist asks where. Yammer says not for long, just until the second dungeon begins, and to think of it as volunteer work, because he is his promising talent, and he doesn't want to lose him. Those guys from the other platform want him to fail. The fact that he's still active after encountering Baphomet is making his relationship with them look suspicious. In-sung tries to make an excuse, but Yammer says he already knows. But others will keep asking how something like this could happen. This way, they'll just assume he's being legitimately punished, which will cover up any potential conspiracy from his encounter with Baphomet. Yamura says these are all the rules and he knows it. Insung asks what that means for him. The king of hell falls silent, then says he'll sponsor him for now, and they'll be partners to raise his rank. Insung says that sounds good, and Yamura asks if he doesn't believe him. He suggests the king restore his broadcast. When the live stream starts again, Insung introduces himself to his fans. He asks if they know who that is, and everyone in the chat is stunned to see Yamura. Insung announces that he's become his partner, and thanks to their help, Yamura has recognized his potential. He asks the king to confirm, and he accepts, making Insung a partner and granting him several live stream benefits. The protagonist says it wasn't a lie. Yamura replies that he's given him partnership status, so now he must go do his volunteer work. He has arrived in the Hell of Plucking Tongues. The underworld is divided into 7 areas, and this was the Hell of Tongues. The first volunteer activity has begun, pulling out the sinner's tongues. If he doesn't complete the 7 hells in 14 days, he won't be able to enter the second dungeon. Insung looks at one of the workers, asking if he wants to give it a try. He then grabs the man by the collar, repeating the question. Noticing they are all lifeless spirits, he activates his strength and muscle fortification, ripping the tongue out of the spirit. He drops hard to the ground. Yamura tells him to hold on. Dragging the body like a stake to the 20-meter line, Insung wonders if this is even possible. He runs while shouting that it really works. He then drives it in like a stake. Yamura says that if he fails to complete this, he won't go to the second dungeon. The protagonist continues to do this for all the other sinners. One of the old men tries to say that he knows "Please save me." Insung asks who he is, and the old guy shouts that he's a loyal fan and sends 10 balloons. The protagonist is surprised, thinking he's a fan who's been watching since room 1. Yamura reminds him to complete the 7 hells in 14 days to escape the dungeon. Insung says he'll send him to the afterlife in the cleanest way possible, and takes his spear from his inventory, striking down his loyal fan. His strength and weapon fortification skills increase to level 5. Insung reflects that this is faster than hunting monsters. Next is the Hell of Venomous Snakes. He needs to go there and crush the spirits while avoiding being bitten by the snakes. Insung walks through the area while someone lurks nearby. The protagonist shoves his hand into a hole and pulls the man out. The venomous snakes begin to bite the sinner. Insung yells at them not to bite him, but his skill evolves to level 2. He grabs the snakes and throws them to the ground. Finally, the icy hell where he'll dig out the spirits trapped in the ground. Little Gui points to a spot. Insung uses his spear to strike the ground. The spirit asks how he found him. While Little Wee just makes a gesture, the protagonist finishes him off. The other spirits kneel on the ground, groaning in pain. The mammoth's resistance skill increases to level 5. Gangram says this wasn't supposed to happen, and Insung questions why he's there. The emissary asks if he killed 50 snakes from that hell, and the protagonist says they were biting him. Gangram explains they were resources for punishing the spirits. So, Yamura decided to give him a special punishment. Insung questions if he's getting another one while he's already being punished. Gangram creates a portal and tells him to follow, flying far away while thinking he was doing well. They pass over a flaming hell. Insung asks why they are taking the hexagonal path instead of flying, and if he wants to watch the sinners get hurt. The emissary says this is King Chokang's hell pool and he hates modern things, which is why there's no hexagon here. But it would start from there, leading to an immense bridge. They both land on top. Insung remarks it's a huge dam, while Gangram says it's the embankment of the flaming dragon. In the past, during the war between heaven and the underworld, they broke this embankment and the underworld won, so it's a very significant place. Then he curses those guys and Insung notices, but tells him to pretend he didn't hear that. Insung asks what's in the bucket, and Gangram replies that it's a special waterproof paint. He must apply it to the cracks in the embankment wall. Gangram notices a notification on his system. He replies that he understands and so on. Then he announces the job has been swapped and he's leaving, so Insung should do a good job. He disappears thanks to the local hexagon. Insung climbs down and notes there's a crack. The decaying stones made it easy for him to move around. He uses his agility fortification skill. Then he steps on some small rocks and uses them for momentum, leaping forward while painting everything in his path. Insung says it's a bit tedious and notices something different. He sees something that looks like a demon horn and wonders if it's supposed to be there. He steps on it, questioning if he should remove it. He then uses his level 5 muscle strengthening to pull the horn out of the hole. He says it was coming out just fine, until the crack in the wall grows much larger. The protagonist panics as water starts gushing out. He tries to block it with his body, feeling immense pain as the water doesn't stop. Rocks keep breaking away, widening the crack. And everything finally gives way, and the rocks fall into the sea. Insung falls with them and loses consciousness. In King Yamura's castle, he repeats that Save Me broke the flaming dragon embankment. He questions how he destroyed it, while Gangram replies that he didn't know and just received a report saying it collapsed and caused a flood. Yamura says he'll send him to the Forest of Spirits. Gangram explains that the embankment was old and needed repairs, so maybe they should rebuild it. The king of the underworld says not to mention please save if Chokang asks. He doesn't need to know a streamer did it. It was just a coincidence. As for please save, he should be taken somewhere he won't cause trouble, so send him to the Forest of Spirits. Insung was asleep on top of a log. He wakes up, saying he would have lost his life if it weren't for Lil Gui. He wonders how he'll get to land since he doesn't even have an oar and Gui has used up all its energy again. His chat starts mocking the situation and Insung yells that it's their fault he's in this mess. Then he notices something strange in the sea. He asks what that thing in front of him is. Insung grabs the staff and says he got it easily. This would be perfect as an oar. But the thing at the end made it a bit inconvenient. Until the staff moves on its own and hits the water. It breaks and a red ball appears in its place. It moves in front of the protagonist, saying it almost suffocated. Insung questions how the staff could talk. The staff just stares at him for a few seconds, but says its name is Chionha Shin Jinshul, its true name. The protagonist says that's too long and questions it, but the staff says it can also be called Yui, and Insung recognizes it as Sun Wukong's staff. He asks if it's really the Yui Bang. The staff says to call her Miss Yui just without the bang, and notices something different. It shrinks to a small size and falls into the protagonist's lap. Insung asks why she's shrinking. Yui says this aura is suspicious and scary and asks to be hidden for now, but he can't put Yui in his inventory. The protagonist comments that this has never happened before, even great ghosts can go in. Gangram appears, asking what on earth he was doing. Insung puts Yui in his pocket. The emissary says he gave him one simple task, but he made such a mess. Insung denies it, saying there was just a horn there. But Fomit thinks this is great. He never fails to disappoint. He then says the King of Spirits ordered him locked up until Dungeon 2 begins and tells him to follow, leading him to a terrifying place. Gangram tells him to stay there and reflect on his actions. Insung feels that familiar aura once again. He says that, just as he thought, there are zombies and wonders if this is the Forest of Spirits. One of the zombies runs toward him, but the protagonist fights back with his spear, hitting the zombie. It gets up and charges at Insung again. It struck again, but this time with a thrust. The young man says it withstood 3 attacks from his spear and is stronger than the level 5 monsters. Other zombies approach and surround the protagonist. Insung thinks he can't handle this and should escape up a tree now. But even up there, it's full of spirits too. Yui says this fool is thinking of running away without dealing with his business in this forest. The protagonist asks what he should do, and the staff asks what he means by that, since even that monkey from before was smarter than him. So he must cleanse his life force. The protagonist replies he doesn't know how to do that yet, and Yui says he's truly special. She asks if he wants to learn, and Insung replies that he'd be grateful for it. The staff says there's one condition, and the protagonist repeats it as a zombie lunges at him. Yui tells him to take her to the dungeon, and Insung accepts the deal, thinking he'd take her even if she didn't ask. The staff tells him to sit down and hold his breath, and then to relax his body because even if they bite and hurt him, the protagonist shouldn't get anxious. The protagonist gets hit but thinks that thanks to the weakened Chimera's skin, it doesn't hurt much. Yui asks if he can feel it. Insung reflects that perhaps because of the elixir of immortality inside him, he can feel a kind of energy flowing in his body. Yui says he must hold his breath to draw it in first. Now he must slowly contract his diaphragm and gather energy below his abdomen. Insung does exactly as she asked. Suddenly, the zombie stops biting him. All the other spirits also try to find the life force. Insung opens his eyes and notices the spirits are disappearing. Yui tells him not to breathe abruptly and to maintain these long breaths, as this is how he'll cleanse the traces of his life force, and that was how he would take the first step. Insung walks through the forest as the hours go by, moving without using his life force. Zombies lurk in the trees trying to find prey. But Insung takes a deep breath and continues on his way elsewhere. He says it's been 10 days now, and if his breathing gets heavy for even a moment, they'll appear right in front of him. In a corner of the forest, he makes a campfire and says he's going to roast some potatoes. He eats a piece and shares it with little Gui. Then he suddenly looks to the side. Yui complains that he's not the only one who needs to eat. She has a mouth too. Little Gui repeats this, and Yui asks what it's looking at, and if it wants to become a ghost potato. They continue to bicker with each other. Suddenly, some ghosts approach the area. Insung reflects that he was cleansing his energy, so there was no reason for this. Little Gui senses an energy, thinking it's coming from the great ghost as well. A noise is heard from afar, and the protagonist wonders where it's coming from. A giant foot approaches the location. The great specter appears between the trees and looks over. Insung faces the monster and tells little Gui to evolve into a stone. He reflects that all his skills have reached level 5 and he should test his growth. The Great Spectre's claws get closer to him, but Insung dodges and tells the turtle to make an earth shield. The protagonist tries to take the monster's spear from his inventory. However, Yui interrupts, saying he was planning to use a bone instead of her. Insung holds the staff, saying he has the Rui Jingu Bang. Yui asks if he's just going to use it like that, and the protagonist is confused. She tells him to share some of his life force. Insung doesn't know how, and the staff complains about it, but she tells him to imagine drawing the energy from his danchin to his hand. The protagonist does so and emanates a reddish aura. Yui starts to catch fire, and the chat says it's a big red one. Insung activates forward dash and dodges the Great Spectre's foot. Then he uses Great Leap, equipment enhancement, and agility, along with strength, to strike the monster. The creature is hit and begins to disappear without any trouble. Insung absorbs its soul essence and his physical abilities are enhanced. The protagonist says Yui is quite amazing, and the staff tells him he should treat her well from now on. Until she notices that guy is coming, the one showing his terrifying aura. Gangram complains that it's a mess, and Insung says he's finally here. Baphomet reflects that he can control his life force now since the spirits are no longer gathering. Insung asks why he's here since he was doing just fine. Gangram ignores him and says he knows where Ryu is hiding. The staff questions who's hiding because she isn't, but she was just observing since she doesn't feel an emissary's aura coming from him. Insung wonders if the emissary Gangram was absorbed by Baphomet. The emissary just announces that the second dungeon is open and he should go now. In the championship arena, the system tells the participants entering the second dungeon to gather. Lenny wonders where on earth Please Save is, as she confirmed he entered hell, saying that she needs his mysterious ginseng too. Anyway, this Samduction 5248 is quite capable, and half of the challengers are from their side. But the second dungeon is completely different from the first, and nobody knows what could be coming. The protagonist appears right inside in a room with a tomb. His system says this is the lowest level of the pyramid, and he needs to pass through all the gates to reach the top and escape. His streamer rank advanced to rare and can buy the viewership expansion. Insung decides he's going to buy it. The maximum viewer capacity increases to 50, and he quickly hits the cap. A man named Shiba Inu asks if the protagonist recognizes him. Insung says he can't remember him just by the nickname, but the old man introduces himself as a loyal fan of Please Save Me, and Insung remembers. He says he didn't have a choice that time and asks to be forgiven. Ainu just says he'll be watching him, and the protagonist decides to take a look around, until a different screen appears. Because he's a partner, he gets information that there are 2 passages to room 2. One is the normal path, while the other is a hidden passage. Insung yells that it's partner-exclusive information, but he notices something different, like that statue in front of him. Judging by the fragments, it looked like someone had tried to break it. He decides he's going to smash it with his Rui. The staff replies that he's a brute and should use his head for once. The statue had an indestructible barrier and was sitting like a Buddha in the first dungeon. The protagonist says they should look elsewhere in that case, but Yui calls him a blockhead again, because he should use his life force. Insung touches the statue's head, using his life force to break the barrier, thinking that finding the secret passage was actually very easy and simple. The second room of the dungeon was filled with rare treasures and monsters, and he can proceed after defeating the room's boss.